Greetings, Wakefield. I declare the Town Council meeting of September 9th, 2024, open at 7:01 p.m. I'd ask everybody to rise and face the flag and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Sherry, do we have any remote attendees such as Counselor Vincent?
I think he was on, and I don't think he's anymore. So if I see him, I will bring him over.
Alrighty. We have a quorum in any event. We have 6 counselors in the building. Before we engage in public engagement, I'll make a quick announcement, take the chair's prerogative. The Wakefield item reported that, and I don't fault them for this, but they reported that we were going to be presented with a zero emission vehicle policy tonight. I want to clarify that that's not correct. There is no zero emission vehicle policy yet in existence. So we are bringing up, I brought up an agenda item to discuss the timing of that issue, and that is why I just wanted to clarify that for those item readers who might be, mistaken having looked at that. Sherry, for public engagement, my understanding is we may have 1 or 2 individuals.
Yes, we do. The first one is Scott McCauley, and he should be coming over right now.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hi, Scott. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Sherry. Sorry, I cut out for a minute.
Sure, no problem.
I know you know our procedures, Mr. McCauley, but if you could state your name and your address for the record and kindly limit your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Sure. It's Scott McCauley, 32 Walden Road, Wakefield. I just have some quick things. I actually have 3 points I want to go through. I'll try to be quick. I noticed on the agenda the town meeting date is proposed for a Saturday in November. I find this to be highly unusual. According to our town bylaws, the town meeting is supposed to be the first Monday in November. So I'm just wondering why the change in date for the town meeting. I thought because of maybe the election being on Tuesday the 5th, that might play into something. So I reached out to the town clerk. She was actually unaware of a date proposed change to Saturday. And she said, in fact, she would be fine if town meeting was on Monday the 4th and the election was the 5th. In fact, she did the same thing in 2020. So if the impetus of was this the election and changing it, I'm just wondering if anybody had thought to reach out to Betsy to actually check and see. The town charter does say section 2-9 titled time of meeting. It does allow for up to 30 days change from the first Monday in November, but specifically refers to the bylaws. In that section 2.9, it says on such date as may from time to time be fixed in the bylaws of the town. The town bylaw is going to say that the annual financial town meeting as provided in section 2-9 of the charter shall be held on the first Monday in November each year. So that shall be held on the first Monday in November each year, to me, is fixed in the bylaws of the town. So I'm just not really quite sure where that came from with the date and who changed that. But I'm hoping that somebody can address that later on this evening. And I think that maybe some legal clarification between the charter and the bylaw with Mr. Mullen might be in order before any type of vote is taken on that date. The other thing I wanted to talk about, the Economic Development Council. I sent an email to some of you on this board and to the Economic Development Council, Tommy Mullen. There's a lot of money that is being proposed or being spent on this, but there doesn't seem to be what I can find the public posting of an allocation of those funds. I'm going back and reviewing some of these meetings, and I'm looking at things that are being directed towards, like $100,000 for a mural that was proposed, Pokemon type Go thing to look for fish or pigs and pop-up businesses. I don't think this was the spirit of what the opera funds were meant for. I think they were meant for businesses that were here in town during the pandemic that suffered I think this money should go towards those. I did happen to look and check. Two members of this board have not been sworn in. These are two members that are regularly at meetings and vote on these issues. And I would think before any other money is allocated, that a full audit needs to be done of all of these meetings to find out if there were any quorums at the time that they voted, so that we can see if this was even legal. They're in an advisory role to the town council. They are not a board that I know of that's able to allocate funds or to enter into contracts.
Could you wrap it up, Mr. McCauley? You're over time.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
You're over the 3 minutes. Could you wrap it up, please?
Oh, yes, certainly. So I'd like to say that I think that this should be looked at. I think that there's a lot of stuff that's going on that's inappropriate. I think it's a waste of funds that they're spending it on. I think that this money needs to be pulled back. And I think they'd be better spent on things like the solar panel project at the junior high school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sherry, do we have a second public participant?
Yes, we do. We have Karen McNamara, and he should be joining us momentarily. Okay, here she comes. Hi, Karen, you're on mute. She may be having an issue. She doesn't seem to be unmuting. But in any case, I think, Mike, you and Ed have the public participation form that she sent in. It's in Govinda as well.
Do you want to read it, Steve, perhaps? Maybe that's the quickest way for us
Sure.
to proceed.
If she jumps on, she can jump in.
Right, exactly.
My name is Karen McNamara. My family has been fortunate to live on the shores of Lake Quannapowitt for over 30 years. During this time, I've used my camera and lens to open a magical window into our town's fantastic world of wildlife. You'll see many of my images on the local Facebook pages, especially the bald eagles. The images I have captured have been equal parts tender and harsh because, like it or not, wildlife is genuinely about survival of the fittest, and I'm okay with that as long as we humans are not stacking the odds against our creatures here. In my time recording, I've seen the evidence of man-made dangers to our local wildlife. It is due to our town's growth and progress and the urbanization of the great and small creatures among us. Poisoning is a bit of a culprit, but that's another topic for a different day. But what I'm here to share this evening is another significant danger. That is monofilament entanglement. The improperly disposed fishing line, debris, and hooks will leave behind that entangle, break bones, and cut tendons can maim or kill wildlife and our pets, and I've tripped over the stuff myself. This monofilament causes significant devastation to our wildlife. So let's make it personal. On our New Year's Day in Wakefield this year, January 1st, 2024, I received a call from a group of my ethical wildlife photographers and was alerted to their finding a great horned owl in a tree. I rushed down to the common. Upon closer inspection, it was found that this beautiful creature was hopelessly entangled in fishing line, barber, and all. The Wakefield Police and Fire Department were called. I knew I needed to call my friends James and Patty Joyce, who are experts in handling, transporting compromised wildlife. More importantly, James is also the father of Friends of Horn Pond monofilament collection program. After the police and fire department cut the fishing line and brought down the great horned owl, James transported the injured raptor to Cape Ann Wildlife, an expert in compassionate wildlife rehabber. Unfortunately, this beautiful owl passed away. Great horned owls live close to 20 years. What a loss. We don't know if she had a mate or a nest with owlets needing to be fed. It was such an unnecessary loss. I love fishing, I love anglers, but we need a monofilament collection and recycling program around our lake. Did you know that monofilament does not biodegrade for 600 years? With the horror of the great horned owl passing, I was inspired to build 2 collection bins designed by Boat USA. It was easy. The same collection bins have been used successfully at Horn Pond and across the U.S. We must be good and faithful servants, stewards, and protect our wildlife. By doing so, we also protect ourselves. We need to do better, and I'm confident we will. Thank you, Friends of Lake Hugh. I am thrilled we are talking about this tonight.
Thank you, Town Administrator. Anyone else for public participation today, Sherry?
No, that's it.
Okay, then let's move on to item 5, presentations and updates. We have as item A, Traffic Advisory Committee recommendations with a vote anticipated. I will turn this over to, I assume to you, Lieutenant Anderson.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. Lieutenant Joe Anderson, Chair of the Traffic Advisory Committee for the Town of Wakefield. We have some recommendations and also some general traffic updates for you, but first I'll start with the following for your consideration. The first is a traffic calming application we received from a group of residents on Merriam Street and Robert Street in the Greenwood section. They submitted their application. They were successful in obtaining the required number of signatures from abutters in what we reviewed as the area of concern. We proceeded to the data collection phase of our traffic calming policy. I'll share some of the results of that data collection. But ultimately, DPW contracted with a firm, T and Bond, to do so. And after reviewing their recommendations, the data that they submitted to us, and had a traffic advisory committee meeting, discussed some of the options, and felt that it would be best that 2 speed alert signs be installed on both sides of Merriam Street, along with the accompanying 25-mile-an-hour speed limit signs. If you review our traffic calming policy, this is a stage 1 traffic calming measure. So in about 6 months, we'll review with some more data collection and see if the speed alert signs and the accompanying 25-mile-an-hour speed limit signs help, or if there's still a traffic concern there. If there is, we might consider it a stage 2 traffic calming measure, which would be something more permanent, like a bump out in the roadway or things of that nature. So that's our first recommendation. I'm happy to share some of the data that we received from T and Bond, or take any questions if you have.
Questions from town councilors? Yes.
2 things. One, I guess, what is the ballpark cost for like the additional couple of signs and the work that Bond did? And then, was the traffic concern the speed, or is it that it's being used as a cut through from Merriam to Forest?
That was a great question. So we received a lot of feedback of both cut through traffic and speed. Robert Street didn't qualify. They had a pretty low daily vehicle volume of 120 vehicle trips per day, and the speed is well below the speed limit at about 22 and 23 miles an hour, the 85th percentile speed. Marion Street saw about 1,500 vehicles per day, so that was the volume there. About 54% were northbound travelers, so I would assume that the slight increase in over half of the trips that are going down Marion Street is a result of some cut through, especially when the train gates come down. In Greenwood, I'm sure that some people try to cut through and find a different way wherever they're going. So we saw an increase in the northbound traffic. But to answer your question, I don't know the actual cost on the data collection. That would be a question for the engineering department. I do know that the signage is about $6,000 for a pair of the solar-powered speed alert signs, and that would be something that the town would own and be able to redeploy on a semi-permanent basis somewhere else to our next traffic calming application if we find in 6 months that a more permanent solution is necessary, or that the street no longer qualifies for traffic calming.
Mr. Chairman, I can answer the first question. Probably about $2,000 to $3,000 on time bond, because it was a smaller area.
Is that enough? Okay, thank you. Councilor Dombrowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Lieutenant. Trying to understand a little bit about the criteria that we use. I understand, obviously, that a number of the neighbors had signed a petition, it sounds like, looking to have this reviewed. Is there a particular criteria that TAC uses in order to determine when ultimately we have these traffic calming signs or these speed alert signs? Because I understand we've had engineering involved, but I can also anticipate a number of other streets potentially coming with similar requests. And kind of going forward, how do we address those so that we don't have these signs almost become like white noise to the driver, if you will?
Those are great concerns and great questions. We're also concerned about that too. We have a lot of requests for not only traffic calming, but flashing signs in general. And you're right, the studies show that flashing signage where it can attract the attention of motorists to an unusual condition or occurrence can also become white noise after a while, and that creates a more unsafe condition than you first had. So we kind of look at it holistically. As far as the policy goes, we want to see speeds that are 7, 8, 9 miles an hour in the 85th percentile or greater to first say that there is an actual speed problem. From that point, we look at things like our crash data for the roadway to see if there's any upticks in crashes there, if it's above the district average or just above the average for streets that are similar in town. We look at obviously the complaints from our residents and their firsthand accounts and the type of enforcement that we're able to do there on the police side. I can tell you from personal experience, we've had our speed trailer out there, but it's really ill-suited for a street like Merriam. There's no sidewalks, no shoulder. It's a narrow roadway, so when I put the speed trailer out there, people have to actually kind of stop to get around it. It doesn't give us a good data set to work off of and get a good count of what's actually going on there, and it's not really a more permanent solution. So that's in essence what we look for, but you're right, we really have to take this on a case-by-case basis, and it's something that I was going to talk about a little further on in the meeting, but I can kind of touch upon it now. Mr. Mayo and I are looking into a company called Urban SDK. We had a call with them about a week or so ago, and they are a telemetrics company that can provide the town with real-time data on vehicle speeds and traffic volumes. And I think that will not only save our residents time and frustration of going through a traffic calming application when it doesn't warrant full-time traffic calming, but it'll provide the town with almost a real-time traffic study, if you will, where we can look at segments even of roadways and see that maybe there isn't a speed problem throughout the entire roadway, but certain pockets or time periods have speeding that we can kind of focus on in a more pointed way with the limited resources we have for traffic enforcement. As you know, our offices they're tied up for a longer period of time, and I'm sure you can remember Chief Story telling the council that a lot of our time is spent it's not really a statistical call volume, it's how much time we spend on calls. So those hours that we spend on calls take our officers away from being able to do things like traffic enforcement. So if I can provide those officers with times and places to go to, that would definitely increase and be a force multiplier for our traffic enforcement. So that's something we're looking into, and I think that would help both our residents and the town kind of determine, what street actually qualifies for a more full-time permanent measure, like a flashing sign or a bump out or things like that. And I think that some streets have a speeding problem, but it might be a certain 45-minute period where there's some fast traveling vehicles. It doesn't mean the street qualifies for or deserves some type of a permanent traffic calming solution, but maybe our officers need to be out there for that 30 or 45-minute period of time. And that's also when the residents are home seeing speeding cars and assume that it's, a common occurrence or that it's throughout the whole day. I get complaints all the time that say that there's speeding cars throughout the day, but they're not there all day. So they don't really know for sure, which causes us to hire a company like T & Bond and dive into it a little bit further. So we are looking into that. I think Urban SDK, it's a pricey program, and we're working on identifying a funding source for that and working on a quote that's a little bit more palatable for the town. But I do like what they provide as a service, and I also like the fact that they can overlay their data set with traffic crash data, so we can actually really focus on the intersections that have a documented history of crashes, rather than just going to complaints of people that see a one-off speeding car and complain about it. We want to go to intersections and areas of town that we can prevent injuries and crashes. So that's where our time is best suited, and then focus on complaints from there. So there's a lot of opportunity out there, and if we can leverage some of the technology in our favor, I think we can do a lot more with the resources we have as a town that, we're still staffed as a town, but we're growing every day. So traffic is one of those problems that it's very, very difficult to keep up with. So I think we have to leverage something like that in the future to not only help us as a town, but help our residents and be able to provide them with more effective services.
That's important, Lieutenant. And I think, as you point out, the 6 months review seems reasonable and appropriate. I do wonder if we were to say take down a flashing sign after 6 months, and then do look at where we are a month or two from then, whether we'd still have higher speeds. Because I do think that the flashing effectiveness is probably achieved mostly within the first 6 months. I'm totally speculating here. But I would be curious to see how that would compare. As you say, these signs are movable, and we could put them potentially, reinstall them in another location. But I do have some concern that, as you rightly point out, at some point, the signs might actually have the opposite effect, and they may not have the impact that they would otherwise. So I don't know to what extent TAC has thought about that aspect of it, but if we were to have the signs up for 6 months, then be able to gauge traffic with speeds with the signs, have the signs then taken down, and then in the months following, how does that compare? Did the signs kind of achieve a one-time benefit to us that is long-lasting, or are the signs necessary indefinitely in order to maintain those speeds? So I think just something to think about if TAC could, because I do have a concern that more and more streets are going to continue to make these requests, and I think legitimately so, and I imagine the engineers too will probably find good reason why we should perhaps install more of these signs. But I think at some point we become a community of just flashing lights everywhere, and I think they really lose their meaning and impact for all of the streets that are looking to be more safer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Carney.
Lieutenant, I'm very interested in that program. In fact, the town administrator shared that company with me. I tried to look them up, and I have some questions for them directly when you want to start that process. And one of the main questions is, if it goes beyond measuring the speeds at certain times of day, can you give you traffic counts? Because my concern is, I once was quoted as saying that traffic engineers are as good as a week later. Times change. Now we have Waze and Google Map, and traveling home from Worcester for 14 years, I learned where Waze can take you, and it takes you way off route. And Merriam Street might be an example of this, by the way, in the sense that some people on certain days might use that as a bypass. Walton Street, I'm not sure why people would turn down Walton Street. I have no problems with putting signs up, but I don't think they're being directed there by any of the programs or having trucks going down there. But I think it's important to know what's happening and what's happening later, as you mentioned. I'd be interested in seeing the effects of what's going to happen on North Ave, on Main Street, and Lowell Street, which affects me, and affects my neighborhood, in the sense that when you do traffic calming on one street, when 128 is backed up going northbound, where are they going to go? And they're not going to go down North Avenue any longer. They're going to go down Main Street. Now, if we do traffic calming on Main Street, then we got Lowell Street, where we just put in a diesel gas station, okay, at Four Corners, okay? And I've already taken pictures of 4 different large trucks going down there and fueling, which I was told at one time that's not going to happen. It's happening. And you don't need to have signs on 128.95 that says dieselless exit, because they have apps. Everybody has apps today to tell you where to go fuel your trucks. And I've always been an advocate of getting rid of diesel fuel, and fought that for many years in my neighborhood. We had added 3 gas stations on Lowell Street, and all of a sudden, at the very end, we added one with diesel fuel. It didn't make sense to me. Germany is cutting down the production of diesel vehicles, and here we are putting a diesel pump on the only street that goes parallel to 128, the only diesel station in the town of Wakefield. and have a report from your traffic engineers, not from the traffic committee, but the traffic engineers saying it's not a problem. Well, I think there's a problem with that. So any efforts you can put in, Lieutenant, to try to get more information so we can measure the before and after, the effects of what we're doing, the effects we put signs up, I think is very, very important. But I'd also like to be able to ask a few questions of this company before we hire them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Carney. Any other questions from town councilors? The only comment I would add, Lieutenant, is I like the idea of targeted enforcement. I like the idea of any enforcement. I don't, I'm often dodging the vehicles and waiting for them to stop on Prospect at the obvious crosswalk with the yellow signs, and other places, specifically down at the Church Street intersection. That's terrible as well. Lowell Street is a speedway. If we can target some enforcement, as you've said, I think that makes a lot of economic sense. I thank you for that suggestion.
I completely agree. And just to touch on the two councilors' points, the short answer is yes, there is a segment that we could sign on for to provide like an average traffic volume. And I think that is it's an important function of Urban SDK's program for a couple of reasons. Number one, as Councilor County said, to see the before and after effects of traffic calming, and if it does get displaced to another neighborhood, because if I've learned anything from traffic advisory, it is that everything has an equal but opposite reaction. You restrict parking from one side of the street, they go somewhere else. And if you do traffic calming in one area, they speed down the next street. So there's a lot to be said for that. And I think that's, as we move through the stages of vetting this company, they will be coming on board for one of our future traffic advisory committee meetings. And then hopefully, if we move forward again, I'll have them come before you, but they do have that as part of the service, and I think it would be something that we should consider as a town. The other component to that is we are seeing a lot of development applications, both 40B and regular multifamily development applications. We see a lot of contention in our traffic advisory committee meetings over these applications and the traffic impact assessments that we receive. And it would be nice as a traffic advisory committee to provide our own data set and say that, the traffic study that you did the second week in December for 3 days might not really be a good representation of what our residents in that area see on a daily basis. So to have something that we can compare it against that's always available at our fingertips that I could forward to any member of the public or a member of town council and have you be able to respond to a constituent's complaint or concern, and you can zoom into right in front of their house and see if that segment of the street is experiencing whatever condition they're talking about. That would be important for as we grow as a town and review these developments. So there's a lot of value in it, and I think it's something worth exploring.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Town Administrator, do we have multiples today?
Councilor Vincent.
Oh, Councilor Vincent. Sorry about that, Councilor Vincent. I couldn't see you way up there in the mountains.
Thank you, Chair McLean. And thanks, Sherry, for getting me on. I'm up here in the White Mountains in this body service at my end. That's the two on the computer. It was dicey that I was going to actually get one. Lieutenant Anderson, I know we communicated the other day. Thank you for your work on this. I did take a jog through that neighborhood last week around 11 o'clock in the morning, and it's not easy because there are no sidewalks. People park in front of their houses, and there was a significant amount of vehicular traffic, including a couple of trucks. I also met a couple of neighbors who wanted to implement some of the stage 2 measures now, and I explained about stage 1, and I explained about the 6 months. Can you just briefly recap what happens at stage 2 after your 6 months and how you involve the neighborhood, including the fact that I think 2/3 of the residents have to support a stage 2 measure if we get to that stage 6 months?
Sure. So we would review the results of the traffic impact assessment after the 6 months, and Councilor Dombrowski brought up a good point. We could actually do a 6 month, then even a couple months after to see what the impact is of taking the speed alert signs out, but see if a problem still exists. If a problem does still exist and it's significant enough, the residents have an opportunity to continue on with a stage 2, which could be a more permanent solution, like a bump out, chicanes, they call them, things of that nature. It gets a little bit more involved simply because there's going to be more, I don't want to call them real tax dollars because 6,000 is real tax dollars too for the 2 speed alert signs, but we can't take a bump out and put it on another street. It's not, it's a more permanent solution. So it's actually going to have a cost. We're going to get quotes. The engineering is going to figure out exactly what that would cost, and the residents, when they go around with the petition again to get the required signatures, are going to see, some type of a schematic of what it would look like. They're going to see how much the estimated cost is for construction, and they'll get to make a decision on that. So we want to provide them with as much information as possible, and then go through this process again where, it goes before traffic advisory. We make a recommendation to town council, and you folks can consider it on that.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Chair.
You could take all 3 votes under one if you want, but you kind of haven't talked about items 2 and 3 yet. So
Right.
it's up to however you want to do it.
Why don't we move on with the second item, Lieutenant Anderson?
So the second item for you to consider is the installation of a no-through-way or dead-end street sign for Walton Street. We received a resident complaint of increased traffic volume in the area. I don't know what the reason is for it. I suspect people stuck in some type of traffic queuing around peak hours and maybe not using ways and realizing that there's no way to get over to Montrose Ave or to get off of Salem Street. So for those reasons, we request the installation of a no-through-way sign on Walton Street.
Any questions on that one from town councilors? Councilor Carney?
Yeah, I just want to know how you determine the difference between a dead-end street and a not-through-way street. Because my street is a dead end, and these people are going to have a not-through-way street. Is that a choice of the constituents? Or? I'm saying that justly.
I'll ask engineering or whatever's compliant.
I think the signs we put up now say no outlet.
No,
For that reason.
the compromise, yeah. Thank you, sir.
Councilor Butler?
Do we think this is a squeaky wheel problem? Like, I mean, I don't particularly like, one person calls you up saying like, hey, I see increased traffic. Can you put a sign up? Maybe wait for the third person. I just don't feel like I would want to respond to one homeowner squawking about one issue and doing something for them.
That's entirely up to the council to consider, but we did hear the resident, and it does seem like they do have an increase in volume there according to their account. So we've made these recommendations in the past.
Well, was it just one person?
In this instance, it was.
Yeah.
It was one
Okay.
person. In the past, we've had one. We've had multiple. We can definitely see in that area from Salem Street that there may be cut-through traffic or attempted cut-through traffic just based on where it is. The traffic queuing, the volumes. There's some new developments in that area, so it could be more turnaround traffic. People looking for off-street parking and things like that. Multiple reasons. May not all be traffic looking for cut-through, but I do suspect that there is some. But that's entirely up to the council. If you don't think it warrants it, entirely up to you.
Councilor Dombrowski, did you have a question?
I did. So I fully respect that a resident had reached out on this, and I don't doubt that the resident perceives that there's additional traffic, but I think these decisions really have to be data-driven analysis and decision-making. And I don't know that anecdotal data is data that we should be using to put up signs. I think we'll create a new precedent where someone feels as if too many vehicles are going down their street or going at a high speed, and they petition for a sign, and then when it gets put up. And I think we have to be mindful that these signs have to have meaning and purpose. And having too many signs, aside from the side pollution aspect of it, may mean that they're not taken as as deliberately as they should. And so I do think, to your point about the yin and the yang of this, putting up a sign here, then does that prompt the next street over to have a sign up? Next street, we have signs all over that perhaps say the same thing, and then next thing you know, none of them have any meaning anymore. And so I'm not in favor of this because I don't think that we have the data to support this kind of decision. And I think what you're talking about, Lieutenant, going forward about our ability in real time to be able to have our own data is really important, especially when we're talking about these new developments. I have yet in my, 8 years on the council, have yet to have a traffic study by any developer come in to say that, oh, our development is going to be too onerous on the traffic. Now, that's remarkable to me. But I can say anecdotally that is not, in fact, the case. And so I think that being armed with that information going forward and making these decisions will help us to make better decisions that are far more well-informed. And so with this kind of a request, while I absolutely respect the perspective of the resident, I don't think that it in and of itself rises to the level of us making such an adoption. Thank you.
Any other questions on this, what I'll call the second item, or item number 2? Lieutenant, could you proceed with the third item, please?
Sure. So the third is the request for the installation of another 15-minute parking space in our downtown area. This would be on Richton Ave, just 2 spaces away from Main Street. The request came from 2 of our members of TAC who also share a role on the Disability Commission. What drew their attention to this area is the future of the new Inspire Cafe. Although I think the area could benefit from another 15-minute space for some of the other businesses in the area, notably farmland. There is a handicap space at the intersection of Richton Ave and Main Street, and this would be the space just behind the handicap space. So I think it would be beneficial for our residents that want to stay off of Main Street, that might be more comfortable accessing Main Street on foot from a side street, as opposed to some of our angle spots. And I think it would serve the new Inspire Cafe specifically quite well. Our member Dan and wife Lois Benjamin, they've been involved in the town for many, many years, and they brought up a good point with this particular space, that there are going to be patrons and employees of the Inspire Cafe that may not necessarily have a handicap placard or need one, but they may need some time to get to the front door. They may need a little bit of assistance from a caregiver, and a space that is closer that allows them to get to work or to be a patron of the cafe would be helpful. But I also think it would be helpful for the downtown area to add another quick serve space. So that is our recommendation, is to add 1 15-minute parking space on Richton Ave, just behind the current handicap space at Main Street.
Questions from councilors on that request? Councilor Carney?
There's a 15-minute parking space right across the street, right in the corner of, on the other side of Main Street from where Inspire's going in. And I'm just wondering, it's going to be right near the market there. I mean, people are going to be stopping there, running into the market, grabbing a loaf of bread and coming out. I'm not sure we can expect that someone's going to honor that just for the Inspire Cafe. And I just question it. I'm not opposed to it. I'm just saying the fact that I'm not sure that's going to benefit them, and nor the the folks around Inspire are going to probably need it. I think getting them access to parking that's behind the market, it might be helpful. But during a busy day, that traffic moves around there. Cars are moving, people are moving into empty parking spaces, and I could often park there and run into the market and get by something and run out. So I'm not sure how it's just going to benefit that one shop. I just bring that up from an informational purpose. I'm not opposed to it. I'm just saying that, putting these 15-minute parking spaces in different various locations, I'm not sure how helpful they are for the benefit of what we think we're doing, if I made any sense.
Yeah, well, Lieutenant, it wouldn't be specifically for the Inspire, from what I understand.
Correct, and we talk a lot about this at traffic advisory, even with handicap spaces. Just because we approve a handicap space doesn't mean that necessarily the person that requested it is going to have commitment to do it all the time. Somebody else with a handicap placard may very well park there. So we definitely make that loud and clear that it's even though it may serve a benefit to a specific business or resident or person in the area. It's not their space, but I think it does create at least one more opportunity, as it does for people running into family and getting a loaf of bread. And I think that the goal with the downtown area is to have a mix of long-term parking or longer-term parking and the ability to allow people to be patrons of our businesses that have more quick service. And I will say that our parking enforcement officers do an excellent job of keeping those spaces free and clear of violators that, park there for longer than 15 minutes, 45 minutes to an hour, they're getting a ticket. And it's, they've been pretty successful at creating the turnover with those spaces. So I have no concerns that there won't be any turnover, but you're right, Councilor County, it's very likely that somebody else could use that for 15 minutes somewhere else, but that's, I think, a benefit in and of itself. But having Inspire Cafe there and the possibility of another space open for them right by the front door would be an added benefit.
Any other questions from councilors? All right, seeing none, I think it's better if we vote one at a time. I'd entertain a motion to approve the traffic calming at Miriam Street.
Sure. So I'll move that we approve the Merriam Street area resident request for traffic calming measures, including the 2 speed alert signs with reevaluation in approximately 6 months' time following installation.
Second.
Any comment or questions from the councilors? Seeing none, we'll have to take a roll call vote. Councilor Vincent?
Yes.
Councilor Butler?
Yeah.
Councilor Butt?
Yes.
Councilor Dombrowski?
Aye.
Councilor Chines?
Yes.
Councilor County?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, that's 7-0. Sherry?
Thank you.
Second item, entertain a motion to approve the, perhaps you could read it for me.
Well, I could do it either way. I was going to make a motion that we not approve installation of the no throughway or similar sign on Walton Street as requested by one resident.
Can I just, a point of order, I mean, if we either vote no on a vote to approve it or take no action, that is a non-approval, and I feel like it's an easier discussion and a clearer vote for the public if we have a motion to install, and then councilors can vote however they choose.
Is there is that a distinction with the difference?
I don't think it matters. I think the traffic advisory people suggested putting it on, so we probably should vote whether or not we're putting it on. Not that, I'm always happy voting no, so.
So I'm happy to withdraw that and rephrase it as, I make a motion that there be a vote on the installation of a no throughway sign or similar sign on Walton Street as requested by one resident.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
You have to roll call.
Oh, roll call. Sorry. Councilor Vincent?
No.
Councilor Butler?
No.
Councilor Butt?
Yes.
Councilor Dombrowski?
No.
Councilor Carney?
Yes.
Councilor Chines?
Yes.
And I am a no. I believe that the vote fails 4-3, if I counted correctly.
Correct.
Thank you. Third item. We
So
have, yes.
I would move that we approve the Traffic Advisory Board recommendation for the addition of a 15-minute parking space sign on Richardson Avenue near the intersection of Main Street.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. Councilor Vincent?
Yes.
Councilor Butler?
Yes.
Councilor Butt?
Yes.
Councilor Dombrowski?
Yes.
Councilor Chines?
Yes.
Councilor Carney?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, Sherry, that is 7-0 approved. Thank you very much, Lieutenant.
Before we let Joe go, if that's okay, Mr.
yeah.
Chairman? A Columbo moment for you.
No, go for it.
We've received,
For those who aren't old enough,
Yeah.
Columbo was a TV show.
we've received a number of calls and emails regarding the traffic pattern and parking patterns around the high school. And I talk to the superintendent every day about it, and I would like to have Lieutenant chime in here for a second, but I will say that, you know, this is not the first school we've built in a tight location. And there, you know, when you open school that first day, traffic is bad anyway, even on the best of circumstances. So it's a little bit rougher up here because some parking is eliminated, particularly for students that will be back online. It's the lot up the Hemlock Hill, October, November, which would help ease some things. But so there are some temporary measures that we've all heard about. As I said, I talk to the superintendent every day, and he feels that right now it's the safest it is for the students and teachers getting into the school. So that's his statement, and he's for that. So, but I thought Joe could give a little bit of a update on that, particularly in front of Woodville, which seems to be the latest discussion.
Sure. So we did get a lot of feedback about the recent barrels that are out on the west side of Farm Street. And if you recall back, I think it was in May before the end of last school year, traffic advisory, or actually I came before you got into traffic advisory to try to alleviate some of the parking issues caused by that lot going offline. And you folks approved the lift of the restrictions on the east side. Well, as I said, every traffic change has an equal but opposite reaction. We had some students that were parking on the west side. Problem with the west side of Farm Street is that you have curb cuts, you have driveways, you have Kennedy Circle, you have Woodville Circle. You have the crossing guard that has some concerns about cars parked too close to the crosswalk, especially on both sides, and it narrows the roadway width. So we had a lot of complaints that people were still parking on the west side in violation of the posted signs. So what we did temporarily for the start of the school year is have the barrels out there just to reinforce that parking is available as voted on by town council on the east side of Farm Street, where there are no concerns of people not being able to see exiting the driveways, people not being able to see exiting the two roadways there. So those are temporary. That's to reinforce the parking restrictions that are in place right now, and those will be coming out over the next couple of weeks. We did a couple meetings over the summer with Bond, the construction firm, the developer for the new high school, along with DPW and the school department. And we have an approved crossing guard for that area. The DPW refreshed the line painting in that area for the school zone. We deployed the police speed trailer at the bottom of Hemlock Road for complaints of speeding vehicles, especially at the end of school, coming down from the vocational school. There's some temporary speed bumps that have been installed to try to calm traffic before the crosswalks and before they reach the main school intersection of Farm and Hemlock, and the other curb cuts for the driveways for the high school and the Woodville. We did receive a complaint from the crossing guard of the Woodville in preparation for the school year that vehicles are parking too close to the crosswalk. So that was another reason and rationale for the barrels to be out on the west side to try to prevent that and allow the crossing guard to safely get students across there. The DPW also was helpful in getting a rectangular rapid flashing beacon for the newest crosswalk. It's probably about a year old on the old Nahant side of Farm Street. So that's going to hopefully help us to cross safer there. So several improvements to the area. The whole area is in flux. All of these changes are written in pencil, so they'll change again. Our goal is to do what's safest for the students and everybody that's traveling through that area, no matter what method they travel through the area. You know, ultimately, what we need is for the construction to be completed and the realignment of the roadway and the reconfiguration of the two roundabouts. But that won't be happening tomorrow. So in the interim, we want to make it as safe as we can and and working collaboratively with Doug Lyons and Joe Conway and Bill Leno at DPW. We've been successful in getting some good improvements temporarily there for the time being. So those are some of the improvements there for traffic down at the construction area of the high school and the location of the school.
Town administrators, we did receive an email from, I believe, the school committee chairman.
Yes.
Is that
That's
the
part and parcel
impetus
of this, yes.
for why
Yeah.
we're discussing this now?
Exactly. Him, and we also received one from another member of the school committee.
Okay, but I guess what you're telling us is that you have been in contact with
Yes.
With Dr. Lyons, and we are doing the best we can.
We're doing the best we can, and hopefully, a lot of the pressure will be taken off when the student lot across from Landrigan Field is completed, because there was some work that needed to be done there. I think you could see like a retaining wall, something being put in. When that's done, we can probably, and Lieutenant will help me out here, probably a lot of those students that are going further down Farm Street that they couldn't before the council made the change, could go back up to that lot. So we would free up, that for the kind of the Woodville parents a little bit better.
Any other questions from counselors? Counselor Butler, I believe you were first
I
there.
think I think this is for both. I understand the need for no parking on that west side. I think the biggest issue that there are two major issues that I've heard of from sort of both constituency and actually having suffered through it is it feels like before we had 2 lanes from that juncture where you exit the high school to Nahant Street heading south. And really the barrels, you could put the barrels on the sidewalk, or not on the sidewalk, but on the berm there, and allow the traffic to continue to flow through, people going south who are going to make the right on Nahant and people who are going straight. And that would free up an incredible amount of traffic, because now you're narrowing everything down to a single lane when it seems crazy to. But also I've heard that probably both Woodville Circle and Kennedy Circle in the afternoons have become both a staging and stopping point for people waiting to pick up their kids, which is also, and I think those areas have a lot of kids who live on that street, but also has staged sort of the counter protest of like people putting out chairs and whatnot to like block off people from this. So it's getting to be, it's getting like it's Boston without the snow. But really, I think my frustration around this is it feels like you could keep the barrels there. And again, a couple of people who parked on the other side of the street and were changing everything because a couple of people were stupid. And by the way, if somebody parks on that side of the street, just tow them. Just get their car out of there. I mean, if a student decides that they're going to park wherever they want, that's fine. You can also pay the $400 for it being towed. So I guess that's
Lieutenant Anderson and I did have kind of that discussion about the 2 lanes. Do you
the
want to
2
jump in?
lanes is a big drop off. I will say that as like somebody who's lived through that pain.
Yeah, so it isn't 2 lanes there. I mean, you can pass on the right if somebody's taking a left lawfully,
Yeah,
but,
I mean, not lawfully, but for all intents and purposes, it's been 2 lanes for the past 15 years. So, during that time of day.
Right, and I think the rationale for the barrels being out for the first couple of weeks of school was because we couldn't possibly be out there towing 10 cars, and to tie one officer up for towing even 1 or 2 cars is a complete waste of our resources.
Oh,
So I think
I'm keep the barrels up. Just get them off the street.
To more physically prevent that from happening, so we didn't have to do that, and to reaffirm the fact that there is no parking there in the morning.
Counselor Butt?
So thank you, Lieutenant Anderson, for those updates, and thanks, Steve, for mentioning working with Superintendent Lyons. Can I just ask for an update? And I didn't ask for this before, Lieutenant Anderson. I don't think I made the last TAC meeting, but we had a biker hit by a car and killed on Farm Street. And we just haven't heard any updates about that. Have you thought about I know with the schools there, but have we thought about doing anything else to make it safer for bikers and pedestrians? Because that, we just never heard anything after that happened.
Sure. So that cyclist accident, don't want to divulge too much from the details of it, but what I can tell you is solar glare was definitely a factor in that crash. It was a very unfortunate accident. I don't believe it was a fatality, although I could I don't have an update on his condition from when I last. However, he did have very serious life-threatening injuries that did result in being med flighted. So either way, it was a horrible accident caused by somebody that, in my opinion, was affected by solar glare. And I think that it highlighted some of the concerns of the residents and parents that have students that go to some of the schools in that area, which resulted in some of the updates that we made to our planning there, and some of the improvements and the temporary speed bumps and things of that nature. So that's what we've done in the short term there. The crash, I want to be clear, had nothing to do with the construction. It was at 6:30 in the morning, roughly. There was no ongoing construction. It was just a very, very unfortunate accident, but it wasn't directly related to any construction activity or construction traffic there. It's just a horrible accident, a horrible time with extreme solar glare. But to answer your question, I think the improvements are really going to come with the development of the two schools, which includes the realignment of Farm, Nahant, and Hemlock, and the two roundabouts, and the signage, high visibility signage, the rapid flashing beacons, and the overall traffic calming impact that those two roundabouts will have. And we fought pretty hard for that at traffic advisory. I'm happy that we were able to get both developers on board. We were met with some resistance at traffic advisory, but ultimately we prevailed, and I'm happy that we did. I think it's a huge improvement for everybody that travels through that area, not only to clear up some of the conflicts that are caused by the misalignment of the roadway, but there's some kind of choppy crossings there that are going to be more streamlined in the area of the roundabout, and I think it's going to be much safer. Improved signage, rapid flashing beacons which are needed, which is in the roundabouts themselves, and an overall calming of the traffic that's coming out of Saugus, heading downhill on Farm Street. I think that when they hit that first roundabout, they're definitely going to be coming into that kind of conflict point on a much slower rate of speed, which is going to help everybody there. So I'm looking forward to that. I wish it could be tomorrow, but it's coming. It's definitely coming, and we look forward to it.
Thank you.
Councilor Chines.
Thank you, and thank you, Lieutenant Anderson, for the updates. Just a couple of questions. First, you mentioned the first roundabout. That would be what's planned at the access road to the vocational school, kind of further up towards the Saugus line?
Correct.
Okay, great. You also mentioned earlier, obviously we, hope to have kind of the upper lot open in November. You talked about, potentially reverting back to the sort of regular parking restrictions on Farm Street at that point. Is that also, or is the intent then to also remove like the rapid flashing beacons at the crosswalks and the speed bumps, or those would stay up kind of longer term until the road is reconfigured?
So I'll take each one individually. The rapid flashing beacon is permanent. That's going to be staying there, and that was a newer crosswalk about a year ago that was installed by DPW, and it's an area that doesn't have a crossing guard, so that would benefit from that rapid flashing beacon, whereas some other crosswalks in the area do have a crossing guard or more sightline visibility, and that one's kind of, as you're coming downhill on Farm Street, it's a little bit more dangerous with the speed. So that's going to be permanent. The speed tables have to come out mid-November for snow removal operations, and so we'll revisit that in the spring. My hope is we don't need them back in the spring, because there's been improvements to parking and things like that, over the course of several months. And the barrels that are there temporarily are going to be removed for the next week or two. That's just so we don't have to be out there towing cars for a week or two at school. And having more of a cluster than we already do with legally parked vehicles. So those will be coming out soon. And the parking restriction lift was approved, I believe, by town council through the end of 2024. So there's a little bit of a buffer there when they do get that new lot online, that students will still be able to park on the east side there to, try to alleviate, some things that we may not have foreseen there with
Yep.
some of the construction.
No,
What my hope
absolutely.
is, yeah, they're telling us November. I would hope by December 31st, by the time they come back from school break, things are going to be much, much better there.
Yep, great. And just the other thing I wanted to mention, and Mr. May, I don't know if we can make sure that just if folks call the DPW that they're aware of this. I think there's a misperception that, when we looked at parking on Farm Street, that we actually lifted parking restrictions on both sides of the street, which we only did on the east side. I think, again, there's some misinformation out there and some misunderstanding that if we could just make sure, as people do ask about that we give them the right information. But thank you for all your work and for the TAC's work on all of this.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anything further for the Lieutenant Town Administrator?
No, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. Item 5B is Environmental Sustainability Committee. We have two members present tonight. We have the chair of the ESC Large, and we have the former chair, current vice chair, and chair of the subcommittee on climate. Good to have you. And I wanted to make it clear, I actually set this up on the agenda, and it wasn't to have any policy presented. It was because I did receive an email from Ms. Houston, am I pronouncing that correctly? Relative to the zero emission policy. And that caused me to, take a look at where we are on that, because I think that this council has been in one place and you folks may be at a different place. But let me tell you what I see happening here. The email said, as you know, the Environmental Sustainability Committee has been working on different requirements under the DOER Climate Leaders Program, as we agreed to when we were awarded the DOER Decarbonization Roadmap Technical Assistance Grant. One of those requirements is the zero emission vehicle policy, and the request was we're still working through putting materials together and talking to different stakeholders about the policy, but I wanted to check and see whether town council has a slot available at an upcoming meeting this fall coming very soon, that we would come to discuss. But the history in the town council is a little bit different. We accepted the grant, the application for the grant by a 5-2 vote on April 8th of 24. June 24th of 24, multiple concerns were raised that the town council was signing on for all the climate leader requirements. We were told by town administrator, also at that time in June, town council, that our town administrator had a discussion with ICF and a state representative, and he was told that we have no obligation other than the creation of the roadmap. Now, I'm not anti-climate. I'm pushing for solar on the Galvin. I have 5 heat pumps. Nobody's given me a credit of any amount for those. Been driving a Prius for 20 years. I appreciate your volunteerism. I appreciate a lot of what you are doing in the outreach and the schools and many other items, except for the sign. It was a great idea to have that swap program. But I want us to be on the same page, because I've asked, for example, the town administrator for cost information. I don't think that this council can do its job without having cost information. I backed off on that because basically we discussed it and we were told, well, right now, all we're doing is working with ICF. All we're doing is working with the consultant, which is fine. Let's see what they do. Let's see what they report to us, and then take it from there. However, I have to say that going back to your initial meetings on this, bringing in the consultant, it was pretty clear to me that the opinion was that, if we, the town council, accept this, we then have to do the next two items, 5 and 6, however you want to phrase them. One of them is the zero emission policy. I don't think that we do have to do that. And we have been advised that we don't have to do that. So I simply want it to be understood that we, as a town council, will at some point make a decision whether we are going to entertain that policy. But right now, I think that going and getting, I've watched your subcommittee meetings for June, July, August. You, the chair, was at the August meeting. Sometimes it's 2 people, sometimes it's 3 people. And I understand you're also working on an environmental, a climate policy, right? Which is different from the climate leaders, correct?
Yes.
Right. So, and have we, just question, have we tasked you with that? Have we asked for that, we town council?
No.
Okay. And is it your opinion, Ms. Houston, I just want to be, transparent. Is it your opinion that this council should be very soon, voting on the zero emission policy? Is that, because it sounded like you were going to bring it maybe even by the 12th to the full ESC.
There was no set dates for bringing it to ESC, for bringing it to town council. I was just curious if there was, I know that the town council meetings are very busy and there's, not always a open slot. So I was just emailing to see, in the upcoming months, November, December, whatever it is, if there was an opening to discuss the zero emission vehicle policy and all the information that we're working on gathering, which is what we're doing now, is just research, talking to other cities and towns that have passed this policy, gathering as much information as possible about, what it would take to implement this policy in a town like ours.
Well, I guess I do view it as being a wee bit more than research, reaching out to town employees and asking for the, vehicle lists and visiting with the police chief, that this may be, that you're really moving along a lot quicker than, and maybe, I'm only one of 7, so maybe we will entertain this October sometime. I don't know. I want the council to understand that, at least from my position, it looks like, you folks are trying to bring this in very quickly. And I don't think we're there yet. What I think the town council intends to do, and again, I may be in the minority, I don't know that. But what we intend to do is to first get that consultant's report, then look at that report, digest that report. And I guess you are, at some point though, thinking of bringing us at the same time a town-wide climate policy and the zero emission policy?
No, so the decarbonization roadmap is one requirement of the Climate Leaders Program. Another requirement is the zero emission vehicle policy. They're separate. So, while the consultants are working on the roadmap, we decided, hey, we have some time. Let's start researching zero emission vehicle policy, which is another requirement for climate leaders. Let's see what other towns are doing. Let's see, what our vehicle inventory is. Talk to stakeholders, talk to different people that would be, that could give us information about this type of policy, and then, eventually come here and discuss the policy with town council, and not say one way or the other like what we should do. Just have an open discussion about all the information we've gathered, so that everybody can make an informed decision.
Have you gathered any cost information to date?
Not yet.
Okay. And do you have in your own mind a timeline as to when you would want to bring the climate policy?
So the decarbonization roadmap, we're waiting for that to kind of be done, and that's just for municipal operations. We are working on the other piece of a climate plan, which would be for residential and business. So our thought was to combine the decarbonization roadmap for municipal operations with what we were putting together for residential business into a whole town climate plan, which would be, probably next year.
2025?
Yeah.
And that would be a climate policy proposal for the entire town, including residential and business?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have at this point. Any other questions? Councilor Carney?
Actually, I think there's a PowerPoint.
Well, there's a PowerPoint. I'm going to separate this into A and B because that's how I've got it set up, or 1 and 2. 1 is just this discussion about the timing of the zero emission vehicle policy, and the second part is committee composition. And that is more something that Councilor Vincent has been, spearheading. Councilor Carney.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm the liaison to this committee. I went to one meeting, August 8th, and then I met with the chair, the vice chair, I believe the 24th. And I just was surprised, Melissa, that when we met on the 24th, just talk about what might happen in the future, you never mentioned the letter that you sent to the chairman. I was kind of caught off guard when I found out on the 21st you had sent a letter to the chairman asking for a meeting. And is there any reason why we didn't discuss that on the 24th?
It was just an email that I sent to Councilor McLean asking about scheduling, basically, of an upcoming town council meeting for us to talk about the policy when we're ready. It was literally just about scheduling.
Okay.
Councilor Chines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to be honest, I'm puzzled as to why this is on the agenda, because it feels to me like you have a committee that is doing research on environmental policies for a community, which is what we've charged this committee to do, that has said that at some point as they work further in this research, they will be bringing the findings of the research to the town council. I mean, I'm not really sure what it is that we're discussing here. It feels like you guys are, doing exactly what we asked you to do when we created the ESC, certainly before my time on the town council. I think that we're all aware, we should all be aware as town councilors, that ultimately whatever recommendations the ESC brings to this body, we have to discuss those. We may push back on those. We may approve them. We may not approve them, just as we did with the Traffic Advisory Committee a few minutes ago. And so, again, I'm just sort of puzzled as to why we're talking about this now when, again, they're doing exactly the work that the ESC was created to do.
Councilor Dombrowski.
So I have a few questions relative to this, and I was around when we had voted on whether this should be created. I did not support it at the time. And this was back in January of 2019. And I, for one, have a bit of confusion. In our packets for this meeting, we have a mission statement of the ESC, and then we have a current ESC mission statement. I don't recall, and I'll ask Madam Clerk, did we ever vote on what's now identified as the current mission statement of the ESC?
Not that I can recollect, no.
Because when I look at the current mission statement of the ESC, it is very different than what was discussed back at the meeting on January 28th of 2019. And when Councilor Chines indicates this is exactly what we charged the ESC with, that's not the case. If you go back to that meeting from the 29th, from the 28th of January in 2019, it really was rather generic and candidly not particularly forceful in terms of the role that the ESC would be playing. I mean, there were terms like, reviewing and commenting on policies, or engaging with town departments on, policies, programs, things of that nature, identifying resources and grants. What a number of people on this body have observed is a very different approach that's been taken by the ESC, especially ESC subcommittee, and especially in recent months. It is presented as far more activist. There have been discussions of ways in which to try to get to certain town councilors who would be in favor of certain things, whereas other town councilors would not be, and candidly identifying which town councilors to go for to try to persuade in order to try to get an agenda through. I've not seen that in any other committee, commission, or board that we've appointed. I think that is highly irregular. I don't think it's how this ESC should be functioning. I think that candidly, those that have been involved with this process of late in meeting have a very clearly activist agenda. I don't believe for a moment that you are looking to just objectively gather information and then present it in order to have a discussion. Nothing in the tone and tenor of the conversations that have been had at your meetings or your subcommittee meetings are suggestive of that. And I respect that you have a point of view. Like the chairman, I am not anti-environment. I am not all the things that we can do to try to make sure that we have, a healthy planet for generations to come. I supported the solar project as one such example, but I am not naive enough to believe that the composition of this committee currently has a very activist bent to it. And I don't see that in other committees that also may have people of passion associated with them. And that really troubles me. And when I look at this most recent mission statement, the current ESC mission statement, it is a far cry from what had been approved and what had been presented back in January of 2019. Is that a document that the committee as a whole came up with, the mission statement? And do either of you know?
Yeah, it was a number of years ago. We voted on it as a committee.
Right, but see, that wasn't your charge. And we had a very deliberate discussion in January of 2019 where at the time, Councilor Smith-Galvin had laid out precisely what she was proposing the ESC would do. Again, the record reflects, I did not vote in favor of the creation of the ESC. I had a difference of opinion relative to it. But ultimately, I don't think it's appropriate for a body that we appoint individuals to then redetermine and then redefine what your roles and responsibilities are. I don't know of another body that's done that. You are an appointed committee like any other appointed committee, and this town council hands down the directives of the scope and focus of the work to be done, and I think you've gone far afield of that. And the fact that you created this expansive multi-page mission statement that goes beyond, I think, 6 numbered sentences of what the ESC had started off as is a grand departure from what town council had intended this ESC to be. I also think that it falls on town council for not having been tuned in enough over the years to recognize that that's what was going on. But I am deeply, deeply troubled by where the ESC is now, what it believes its mission to be, and the work that it's doing, the way in which it's interacting with employees, the way in which it's engaging with one another, the way in which it presents candidly at times as plotting against the town council in terms of who to position where in order to be able to advance forward an agenda that is, I think, beyond the purview of what you should be doing. And so I have deep concerns. I appreciate the chair raising this. I think it's an important discussion to be had. And I would hope, Mr. Chairman, that if any other committee, council, or board had a similar presentation in their meetings, that you would bring them before this council too. Because I think this is significant. I think you have lost your way. I think that what you are doing is in nowhere aligned with what the intention of the ESC was, nor what this council voted to be in place back in 2019. In 5 years now, we're in a very different place, and I don't think you have the ability to self-define and expand your role and then justify it as you're working within the confines of your mission statement. It's not your mission statement to have created, it was the town council's, and we did that.
I would simply say to Councilor Chine's apparent dumbfoundedness here as to why I would even have this on the agenda. It was clearly stated, and I brought this up when we first voted on even accepting the grant application, and we voted 5-2. I brought up that the subcommittee, the comment was made at the subcommittee, if they being us, if they do this, they will have to do the next couple of items. That to me is advocacy, but be that as it may, we got the grant. We didn't get money, Councilor Butt, we got the grant, so we're not paying money. So we will have a free, run at this decarbonization plan. But clearly, I would suggest that all of my councilors, fellow town councilors, if they haven't, watch all the subcommittee meetings and watch the ESC meetings. Because clearly, in June, the former town councilor was there as a working member. There's nothing technically wrong with that. I'm not complaining about it, but, 2 to 3 people are cobbling together, not just this vehicle policy, but also a town-wide affecting all residents climate policy. And I am not a climate denier. However, I am very careful about this body being the policy-making body in this town. And I think that we may perhaps be giving away too much, and I'm hoping that, and I don't know that it's even, as Councilor Dombrowski says, been authorized by this council. I watched the 2019 meeting. It was very interesting. It was very vanilla.
Yes.
It was a vanilla meeting.
I didn't have a question, but I think Bob had a question before.
Okay, Councilor Vincent.
Thank you, Chair McLean. And thank you, ESC Chair and Vice Chair, for being here this evening. I do appreciate all the work that you do. I'm going to try to keep this very factual. I have watched the meetings that took place on April 8th, 2024, June 24th, 2024, when the ESC was created a number of years ago, as well as all the climate leader subcommittee meetings in June, July, and August of this year. So I'm very particular about what I voted for. And back in April, I did vote for the grant after spending hours on the phone and with emails with DOER. And I know the meeting minutes correctly reflect that we voted to instruct the town administrator to apply for a Climate Leaders Community Technical Assistance Planning Grant. Then when we met in June, it was clarified for us, as the chair indicated, that we were awarded the grant in May. IFC is the consultant. We had no obligation or any contract to sign, and they were solely working to create the decarbonization roadmap. Where I think we're factually, where I'm apart from the ESC, we currently have a vehicle, a fuel efficiency vehicle policy. The town council approved that on October 25th, 2021. 3 members of the current council were at that meeting and voted in favor of the policy. That policy was prepared by and presented by the Department of Public Works, specifically Bill Renault, the town engineer. To me, it would be reasonable to expect that if the town was going to do anything right now to modify, update, or replace the current policy. And once again, I don't think I agree that the town council is not authorized going forward beyond the decarbonization roadmap. But assuming for the sake of discussion that the town council did decide to go forward with the zero emission fuel policy, it would be reasonable to me that the Department of Public Works would be having the lead on this, because they put together the current policy that the town council passed on October 25th, 2021. I know from talking to DPW and the town administrator that DPW is not currently working on this. They're waiting for the decarbonization map first. Is that an accurate statement, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Okay. So my expectation would be that if and when the town council authorizes any entity to put together a zero emission fuel policy, it would be, we would direct, I certainly would support directing the Department of Public Works to have the lead on that, since they prepared the current policy that we adopted a few years ago, and that the Environmental Sustainability Committee would then be providing information and support, if required, to the Department of Public Works. But when I watch the Climate Leaders Subcommittee meetings in June, July, and August of this year, it is clear to me, and I think any reasonable person, that the Environmental Sustainability Committee is not simply doing research, that they are targeted towards putting together a zero-emission fuel efficiency policy, and they have gone to town officials, including the chief of police, to ask for information. And I heard a conversation with the chief of police recently in which he indicated that he was told there was a policy and it would be applicable to the police department. And that caused me concern that you all are well-intended, but I think you've moved far from what we expected to be done right now on having this zero emission fuel efficient vehicle policy. So I applaud your efforts, but I do think in this case you've gone in an area that I was surprised to find that you were doing. Thank you.
Councilor Butler?
Yeah, I guess I wasn't on the committee when this happened, when the first vote took place. And I have listened to the climate leaders. I did participate in an MMA climate leaders discussion. I guess I'm still a little confused. Are we suggesting that the Environmental Sustainability Commission, you know, both is taking a very pro-environmental and pro-sustainable approach, but even if they're advocating, and we can get away from that, but they're not making the decision, they're just proposing. And I guess my thing to my fellow council members, as well as to the ESC, is, you know, obviously don't put together a plan that you don't have a chance in hell of getting passed at town council. It's just not advisable and sort of is a spinning of your own wheels and wasting of your time. But also for us, let's not clutch our pearls about whether or not, you know, we're going to have people on the Environmental Sustainability Council that are very pro-environment. It's like, you know, we don't get uptight about like the fact that there aren't book burners on our library board, and there aren't like people who are bad at math on like the finance committee. What do you think you're going to get when you have volunteers for the Environmental Sustainability Council? Do you think you're getting Exxon representatives? No. So of course the people are going to have an opinion and have a point of view. It's our job whether or not we say we want to go along with it. And I guess that's where I'm like, I think, Mike, I don't know why they're here, to be honest. I think it was a waste of our time. It's great that you're getting to chide them, but we can chide them when they present.
Thank you, Counselor.
Mr. Chair.
Counselor Chines.
So just two things. First of all, I wholeheartedly agree with Counselor Butler that it's important to recognize that whatever policy gets proposed, again, by the ESC or any other non-bylaw appointed charter set up board, does have to be approved by the town council. The other thing that I'd like to point out too is that, you know, there's been some discussion that we haven't charged the ESC with doing this work, and I actually don't think that that's the right way of looking at it or entirely true. I mean, if I go back to the original committee mission statement from 2019, it talks about engaging with town departments and committees on existing or proposed contracts, policies, or programs. I mean, you guys are engaging with town employees and committees in terms of the town council on a potentially proposed policy related to zero emission policy. The other thing to keep in mind is that we as a council do not proactively direct other committees that we appoint to do work. We don't go to the Council on Aging or the Council Commission on Disabilities and say, you have to work on A, B, and C. There's some discretion that they appropriately take to explore things that are of interest to their members who've been appointed, you know, by this council. They bring those sometimes to the council for recommendation. Sometimes we approve them, sometimes we don't. Sometimes they're just discussions that lead to their education on a particular issue. Again, I go back to the fact that there is nothing that the Environmental Sustainability Committee is doing, from my perspective, that is either contrary to the original mission statement that was created and approved by the Town Council in 2019, or with the way that any other board or commission operates. I look forward to seeing some information that you guys share with us on this. I think this is an important discussion to have. I look forward to getting into the details, and I'm sure it'll be a spirited discussion when we get there.
I think I would like to, if there's nothing further, I know that Councilor Vincent also had some items he wanted to discuss about the voting membership on the ESC.
Can I just ask them?
Oh, you absolutely can, sure.
I just want to take a moment and thank both of you and thank the volunteers on this committee. It has not been easy to be a volunteer in this town, someone who's volunteered actually, don't get a paycheck. But our committees, our appointed members, you do all of this for no recognition. I don't think you should have been called today. I really appreciate all that you do. I think we are really fortunate. Unlike other towns, we don't have an environmental director. As Town Administrator Steve Mayo likes to say, we run very lean. We don't have an environmental director like other towns do. So we created a group in 2019 and said, hey, give us some recommendations, because I'm not an expert on environmental policy. We are really fortunate to have former counselor Julie Smith Galvin, who travels around the country speaking about this stuff. Both Melissa and Tiana and others on the committee are experts. I'm not an expert. I'm so appreciative of the work that you do because we don't have someone in town yet. And maybe that's something we think about, Steve, as you look to hire a deputy or other, we don't have somebody. So we have people that are doing it out of their own because they love this town. They want us to do better. As others have talked about, the committee has come to us with other great recommendations that we've passed at town meeting. They're not this rogue group. They're really doing their research, and everything that we've done environmentally in our town has started with them and what their interests are. So I just wanted to take a moment. You guys do a lot of work. Know that I, as a counselor, appreciate the work that you do and appreciate the volunteer that you do. And, we're going to support you. And Steve, that's a call to the town administrator of if they did change their mission or they updated and revoted on their mission, that should have been brought to us. And so going forward of all of our committees, let's make sure that we're updated. I don't think it's a good use of our time to watch every single subcommittee meeting. That's not my job. My job is to hear from you and, hear from the liaisons when we do liaison updates and to talk to the chairs and update on those. But I'm not going to watch every single subcommittee meeting. I hope that the town manager would give us important news, and I would hope that we do liaison updates. That's why we have liaisons.
I'll add on, I'm not going to watch any subcommittee.
Councilor Vincent, I'm sorry, Councilor Carney.
That's fine. Let me say this. I am the liaison to this committee, and I was denied information before this meeting on what they were going, okay? And that's wrong. So why that happened, I really don't know. We had a sincere meeting, had breakfast together. We discussed these things. I was totally shocked when I got an email from the chairman mentioned that Melissa had asked for a meeting. But should we be appointing advocates to advocate ourselves? I just don't believe this. We're asking for people, talented people, trust me, I agree with you, very talented people, okay, to advocate for the environment, okay, then to come out and to advise us. And so we appoint the people who are interested. They come forward, and some really talented people too. Then we go to the light board and say, well, who's on the light board is interested in serving? Obviously, going to be someone who's interested in this. School committee, the same thing. And so I came in, it's not my forte. I was interested. I want to try to find out what they're doing, okay? But they admit they're advocates. You are advocates. You love what you're doing. This is what they're doing. But they're an advocacy group appointed by us. So it's basically, we're finding the prior council, on a 5-2 vote, I understand, mentioned tonight, found people, like-minded people, appointed them to serve on a committee that would support what they would want to do. And I'm not indifferent, and I've heard this to many of the councilors say, I don't think I'm indifferent to many things you're going to do, but some of the things I question. And the fact that a subcommittee chair set up a meeting with us that the chairman wasn't even understanding, didn't know what's going on. So they're acting like these small mini subcommittees and coming across with all these ideas and put them in discussing them in a meeting where they didn't even advise me that this might be coming down the line. So, you mentioned, use your liaisons. I was the liaison. I came in here blindfolded.
But John, they're not presenting anything.
But
the chair asked them to come.
But they asked for a meeting. They asked for a meeting, didn't they?
Later in the fall, when they have a climate plan to present, they don't have anything to present yet.
Then why'd they ask for the meeting?
Mike told them to come here. They asked for a meeting in the future, which she would have told you about if they got it scheduled.
I know. I saw the email. Exactly what Mike saw. I saw the email and asked for a meeting
in the fall, when they had something to present. They don't have anything to present right now.
Councilor Butt, though, I read the email, right? And I've watched the meetings, and I don't think you have to watch the meetings. Don't watch them, Doug, if you don't want to. Don't. But clearly there was an understanding that this town council would have to move forward with the zero emission plan, and clearly it was going to be potentially put to the full ESC, and what's the full ESC gonna say, right? They're gonna say, oh, okay, you guys put in a lot of time in this. We hear that all the time. We're volunteers too, Councilor Butt, and we put in the time too. And we put in a lot of time. I put in a lot of time in the weekend to try to figure out what's going on here. Because my understanding of the majority opinion on this council, not on the specific issue, obviously, but that we were taking this one thing at a time. And I couldn't even get cost information and didn't push the town administrator on it as chair of this committee, of this council, because I was waiting patiently until we get done with the first part of this in the step process. Then I go to these subcommittee meetings, and sometimes two people, sometimes three people are saying, we're gonna move on this now. We're gonna get this to the town council. You might say, well, now we're hearing that all they're doing is research. They went out to the police chief. The police chief wasn't happy. Councilor Vincent was in the town administrator's office when the police chief called. This is more than research. This is outreach. This is they're talking about a template for the zero emission policy.
I'm not super, I am certainly not Greenpeace warrior here. I'm decidedly not. But I think that why are we calling them, who cares what their subcommittee says? It's like my son saying he's going to have a sleepover with 12 of his friends next weekend. Who cares? Great, they say that. That's not going to bind me to it. It's not going to bind you to it either. It's not going to bind any of us to it. And John, geez, she asked for a meeting. She didn't put forth their whole agenda and bypass you. She wasn't end running you. She was just setting up a meeting. I don't even know. I didn't see the thing, but I think it's like you're getting you're making a mountain out of a molehill on this one. And I just don't think I think what are you expecting out of the Environmental Sustainability Committee? All right, fine, we should appoint, fine, let's call whoever it is we'd find to have sort of call the climate deniers, or call whoever you feel like you would have to have a balanced and fair representation on the committee, and appoint them. But good luck getting them to apply.
Councilor Dombrowski.
Councilor Butler, having been on the Finance Committee, I think you can attest more than perhaps anyone here at the table that just because everyone may have an interest in the Finance Committee doesn't mean there's a universality of opinion. There's plenty of debate. There's plenty of votes on particular budgets that aren't unanimous. You know that better than probably anyone. You were on the Finance Committee longer than anyone.
I don't imagine everything they do is unanimous either. I'm sure there are some people who want us to go much further, and then some people who want,
But I think the biggest disconnect we have here is that we, in our capacity as town councilors, have a tremendous responsibility to oversee budgets and to oversee every tax dollar being spent. We are elected into office as stewards of all the budgets and tax dollars. And I have yet to hear anyone on the Environmental Sustainability Committee raise issues of costs. What I have heard is there's no price you can put on trying to save the environment. Statements like that. And I respect your passion, but I hope and I respect the work that you are doing, but I hope you can equally respect that there's a tremendous disconnect between having passion for what you believe is right and have the achievement of goals at any cost, and the responsibility that we have as a town council in being prudent fiscal stewards of every tax dollar. And those may not be aligned. And I think often they're not. And so there's a balancing that goes on. And while I understand that those who are on Environmental Sustainability Committee, as it's currently been constituted based upon apparently what all of you voted on, not what we directed, there is still the reality that discussions of the financial impacts of decision making need to go on and must go on. And I can't think of another board, committee, or council where those discussions are not being had. But the one thing, and I I don't think putting your hands over your ears and covering your eyes and not watching subcommittee meetings and saying, I refuse to do that is appropriate. I don't think you need to do it, but I don't think you should make it out to be like it's not our responsibility. I think, yeah, it's worth checking out when these issues come up. But you, on the ESC, are uniquely predisposed to not talk about any of the financial realities of things. And I don't think there's really, candidly, a clear connection of what we're talking about at these council meetings and what translates back to you. I know Chairman McLean repeatedly has raised the issue of costs of fire trucks and pumpers and all the rest, because those are significant financial considerations. And as you'll hear later on, we are like on track to lose our AAA bond rating because of the kind of debt that we have now. So we're perhaps a bit more holistic in the way that we're approaching issues, but I would hope that the ESC would be more in sync with these realities, because it's a big part of the discussions we've had as the council, and I think it's a big part of the considerations for taxpayers. I don't think we have a community of climate deniers, but I also don't think we have a community that is willing to have an open checkbook and to support any initiatives at any cost, because you are of a strong conviction that it's the right thing to be doing for our community and our climate. So I think there's an inherent disconnect there that has to be mended, because we're going down two very different paths right now, and we're talking about all the work that you're doing, the hours you're spending. If you come before us and you present this, I don't want to hear councilors saying, "Oh, well, they spent a lot of time, they put a lot of effort into this." No. It's very well the case that if you don't consider all of the priorities that are important to enough members of this council, that your work is going to be for naught. And where is that going to leave anybody? Nobody wants to feel as if they're undervalued, nor that the time they spent was spent frivolously. And so I think it's really important that everyone be mindful of that going forward. I'd really encourage you to do that. And I respect every volunteer, and we do acknowledge volunteers. We have a volunteer appreciation each year. For that purpose, many people from ESC, including, come out for that. And we are all volunteers. We're not paid. We're elected, but it doesn't, and you're appointed. That's about the only difference between us. So, I respect yourselves, and I respect every volunteer, as I would hope you would respect all of us as well. Thank you.
Councilor Chines.
Just one very quick thought. I just want to point out another sort of irony in all of this is that I'm hearing the same members of the town council complain about the ESC doing research and also saying we don't have information on cost. I think those two things are the same thing, and that's exactly why I hope you guys continue looking at that so we can talk about cost when the time comes and there are recommendations or considerations for us to look at. But I think I'm ready to.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you're ready. But I'm going to respond to that, because I have, as chairman of this committee, requested cost information from the town administrator. I have done it multiple times. I have backed off on that because Steve has been indicating to me that the town is only working on the decarbonization plan right now, and I didn't want to, impact town resources, because all those town resources cost money, okay? And these folks are out there talking to the police chief. He wasn't happy with the meeting. I don't know what was said. I don't care, but he wasn't pleased with the meeting he had. And we also have had multiple requests of DPW to produce the vehicle list, not by us. So, but at the same time, I did ask Ms. Houston, so nothing's been done on cost, and the answer is no. And yes, Councilor Butler, we will look at costs. We will definitely look at costs when this comes in. I don't know that I need the ESC to do the cost analysis for me, so maybe we'll spearhead that while they spearhead policy, but then again, I don't know that I need anybody else spearheading policy for me. Councilor Vincent, I'd like to move to, if you want to, discuss some of the history.
My 20-second response, to keep this in very simple and factual terms, is that the DPW was working on the zero-emission fuel vehicle policy now, I would wholeheartedly endorse the ESC working with them on it. The disconnect that I have is that the DPW has decided to be in a holding pattern until the decarbonization map is done, and then they will come back to us and recommend whether we should go forward on the zero emission policy. My concern was that the ESC was not just doing research from my watching their meetings, but they were looking at the template that the state has, and I've looked at it too, for the zero emission policy, which we would use if we went that direction. We'd start to use their template, of course. I just think that they were working further ahead than DPW instead of with DPW. And I would prefer to see them wait until DPW comes to us and decides that they want to go forward on it. And then I would endorse having ESC working with DPW. That's the disconnect I see from just a factual standpoint. I'm not looking at this as anything except from the facts that I have discerned from our meetings recently and from my research in looking at the ESC's recent meetings and talking with the town administrator about what the DPW's current plans are to only wait for the results of the decarbonization. So that's the final statement I have on that. Now, recently, we had new liaisons, and I was asked by people if I would consider being a liaison to the Environmental Sustainability Committee and other committees as well. And anytime I ponder going and being on a committee, I like to do some research on it. And I did some research on the ESC, and what puzzled me a little bit is that they have elected officials serving as voting members. So I did a lot of research with help from Sherry Dalton, and you'll see the slides. Sherry, can you pull the first one up? And I could be wrong on this. This is my research with Sherry. The second slide.
Yep.
You got the next one?
Yeah, next slide.
Yeah, next slide.
Oh.
Okay. This is our finding of which committees in town have elected officials serving as voting members. These are standing boards, town boards, committees, and commissions, those that exist long-term. The Environmental Sustainability is one. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund is another. And you'll see there's many distinctions, one of which, that's based on Massachusetts state law, Massachusetts General Laws. And also that was approved at town meeting when the Affordable Housing Trust Fund was created in 2023. And the town meeting approved having a town councilor and planning board member serve on the board of trustees. Okay, would you go to the next slide, please? Now, the next slide is we try to put together a comprehensive list of elected officials who have served or are currently serving as voting members on temporary, project-specific town committees and working groups. And you'll see that list there. And once again, these were temporary committees and working groups established for a finite period of time and for a specific purpose. So I decided to go and do some research, if you can go to the next slide, please, on why the town council made the decision in 2019 to have voting members from the town council, the school committee, and Gas and Light serve on the Environmental Sustainability Committee, since that is the only one in which they do so. And what surprised me in looking at the meeting and looking at the meeting minutes is there really was no discussion at all as to whether the town council, school committee, and Gas and Light rep should be elected members. They did talk about having them appointed there as representatives. Councilor Julie Smith Galvin was the proponent of this at the time, and if you watch the meeting, one of the things she said was the school committee representative could be a member of the school department staff, somebody maybe with some expertise in the area, rather than a member of the school committee. Additionally, the town council discussed the fact that the role of the town council, school committee, and Gas and Light representatives will be similar to the roles on the Human Rights Commission and the Council on Disabilities. I note that elected officials had never been voting members on these two commissions. I think what she might have been alluding to is when the Human Rights Commission was formed in 2015, and I was one of the original members, it had 9 voting members. 3 were appointed by the town council, 3 by the school committee, and then the others were appointed by the chief of police, superintendent of schools recommended somebody, the chief of police recommended somebody, and the clergy recommended somebody who the town council ultimately approved. I think what she was talking about was not that the Human Rights Commission had elected officials serving on voting members on the Human Rights Commission, but that the town council and the school committee appointed members to the HRC. Just like here, you would have somebody from the council, the school committee, and Gas and Light be appointed to the Environmental Sustainability Committee. I also note that when it was established in 2019, the liaison program did not exist. Chairman May put that in place when he was chair, I think around in 2018. So when I look at this, I'm really puzzled as to why we have elected officials serving as voting members only on the Environmental Sustainability Committee. I would bring this up if it was any other committee. If it was the Human Rights Commission, of which I was the first vice chair, I would bring this fact up. If we do, and I'm not asking for a vote tonight, I'm asking for us to just open up a discussion. If we do decide that we don't want to have elected officials serving as voting members, I note that in 2021, the town council increased the membership of the public members to 7. And right now they have 10 because they have 6 members of the public and 1 vacancy besides the elected officials. So if we took the elected officials out of the equation, they would still be operating with upwards of 8 members, 7 members of the public, and they currently have a member of the Department of Public Works serving as a voting member. And having 7 or 8 people on your committee is very similar, if not more, than what many other departments, many other commissions, boards, and committees have. In fact, I think very few of them have more than 7, 8, or 9. I know the Human Rights Commission went up at one point in time to 11. I think the last couple things I'll say, the problem I have with this is it kind of creates a precedent. Currently, I think, Sherry, we have almost half the boards, committees, and commissions that have vacancies right now. What's to stop those boards, commissions, or committees coming to us and saying, you know what, we're having trouble getting enough people to serve? What would really help us if the members of the town council served as elected officials? How do we tell them no, but we said yes to the Environmental Sustainability Committee? And the last thing I'll say, and this is the principal reason why I declined to put my name in to serve as a liaison of the Environmental Sustainability Committee, although from a subject matter standpoint, I was very interested. And that's because the awkwardness of going to one of their meetings and voting on something that's going to be brought to the town council. And I vote in favor of it. But then I come to the town council meeting and I have my town council hat on and I hear a discussion there and I find out information that kind of makes me change my mind. But then I feel badly that the Environmental Sustainability Committee is depending on me to be a proponent for them. And indeed, I voted with them as a voting member on this. That put me in a situation that made me extremely uncomfortable, and therefore I declined to put my name in to be a liaison to the Environmental Sustainability Committee. So I wanted to bring this up tonight, encourage my fellow town council members to get a chance, look at the January 28, 2019 meeting. This discussion only took about 10 minutes. It was at the very end of the meeting. And then maybe sometime in the future, we can talk about whether we think that our elected officials should just serve as liaisons like they do on other boards, committees, and commissions, as opposed to being elected members of the ESC. Thank you.
Any comments or questions from the councilors? Basically, this obviously was for informational purposes and for people to just think about whether we want voting members who are elected officials on our committees or not. Councilor Butler, did you have something?
No, it's a very good point. I probably would say no, but if we put it to a vote now, but I think you guys can talk about it initially.
I usually
Why you
try.
put
I think
people
it's
on.
material enough, and I have
No,
usually,
I think,
yeah.
I don't know if Ed was about to
Yeah.
chime in, but
I was
don't
just going
have
to
an
say,
opinion on
I
it.
usually try to give the council notice a couple weeks before we're actually going to vote so they can go back and ruminate. It's not always been my experience, but it's my experience this year as chair. Councilor Dombrowski?
I actually just, in looking at this, on our town website, we have, as I understand it, Madam Clerk, please correct me if I'm mistaken here, the Environmental Sustainability Committee mission statement, policies, and procedures, that's a 2-page document included in Govenda. That is what is currently on the town's website, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. This is something that they've already acknowledged was created and voted upon by the ESC. There was a prior mission statement that delineated more in line with what had been approved by the town council itself back in 2019. So I would make a motion that the Environmental Sustainability Committee mission statement, policies, and procedures subsequently adopted and currently presented on the town website be removed and rescinded, and that only the mission statement that issued in accordance with the vote of January 28th, 2019 be presented on our website.
Second.
There's a motion with a second discussion from councilor members. Councilor Vincent?
kind of feel like my subject's been hijacked here. My subject was to talk about whether anybody had, before we move on, does anybody have any questions for me about the composition presentation that we just made? If not, then we can move on, but I didn't know if we would finish that part of the discussion. And I would like to hear from the ESC folks their opinion. They may not want to give it tonight, they could give it at a subsequent meeting as to whether they find it beneficial having voting elected officials as voting members, and whether they think they need to maintain that, or whether they be comfortable operating the same as other town boards, as other standing town boards, committees, and commissions who only have elected officials serving as liaisons, not as voting members. So I would like to hear from them if they're interested in opining on that tonight.
I'm sorry, and I should just clarify, I didn't see any other hands up, that's why I mentioned this. I didn't realize there was a further comment on what Councilor Vincent had presented, and as you just said, I understood there to not have been a vote relative to that because it was just new information that you wanted people to ruminate on. But
Yeah.
I apologize, Councilor Vincent, if you interpreted anything else. I didn't think there was any further, I didn't see any further hands on his presentation.
Would you be amenable to the question being answered?
Of course, yes.
Yeah,
I have no issue with that.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify, I wasn't trying to jump in line.
Well, just remember, I can't see you all very well, so I didn't know if other people were trying to talk about the composition issue. I can't tell. Thank you.
Okay, do you have an opinion on the voting members and membership?
Yeah, I do actually, and thank you for bringing this up, and thank you for having us here. Having not had the opportunity to discuss this with the ESC since we haven't had a meeting since these materials were posted, my personal opinion is that it is not necessary to have these elected officials be voting members. We deeply value having them as liaisons because the bidirectional communication with the town council, the school committee, and the Gas and Light Commission is extremely important for our ability to understand what's going on and to help support, environmentally good things happening in town. But I don't actually think that they need to be voting members to be effective liaisons to the committee. I wasn't aware prior to reviewing these meeting minutes that this composition was different than other standing committees. So I don't have a strong perspective that it needs to stay the way it is. But we do very much value having those members available as liaisons to the committee.
Right, and I appreciate Councilor Vincent's work in researching all of that. Some of us weren't here in 2019, so we have to research it to try to figure out what preceded us, and it's amazing. Sometimes things, even though you have minutes, I get more out of watching the 2019 meeting than I do out of the minutes, because there were amendments made at the end of that meeting relative to contracts, which, were in the written document. So it does take research to try to figure out what has preceded one. Councilor Butt.
So, Councilor Vincent, thank you for putting this together. Is your recommendation then that we also take out the voting town council members on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund? That was on page 2 of your slides?
No, because that is in accordance with Massachusetts general laws, and that was something that was passed at town meeting, not by the town council. So if the town council member and the planning board member were to be removed from the board of trustees, that decision would have to be made at town meeting by the legislative body, and it would not be in conformance with the Massachusetts general law that's applicable on affordable housing trust funds that does recommend that municipalities that are towns have a member of the town council serve or board of selectmen serve on. But if the town wanted to make that change, that would have to be made by town meeting, because that's how the decision was made at town meeting, not by the town council.
I think a lower hanging fruit on that particular subject, Councilor Butt, would be something like I'm, for some reason, a voting member of the WCAT working group. It doesn't matter to me if we wanted to be consistent and remove me as a voting member. It wouldn't really make any difference. I think the Housing Trust, as stated, is a different kettle of fish.
Because it was voted on at town meeting?
You've indicated, Councilor, that
it's in conformance with Massachusetts general law.
Yeah, it's the
It
law.
was a recommendation or it's a...
It's a requirement.
It's a requirement? Okay. That's what I needed to hear. Thanks, Tom.
What Mr. Mahone said,
He said it was a requirement, not a recommendation.
And then the reason I broke off the temporary project-specific ones, and the chair is right, all of those, I'm a voting member as well as Councilor Butler on the new Housing Production Plan Steering Committee. MSBA, School Building Committee, that is required by MSBA. So some of these were required. Some of these don't exist anymore, like the Public Safety Reassessment Committee and the MBTA 48-3 Working Group no longer exists. We don't have to have town council members serve as voting members on those, but the distinction there is those, once again, are just temporary committees and working groups established for a finite period of time and for a specific purpose. And that's why the past practice before I got on the council by the town council was to have town council members serve as voting members, for instance, on the Public Safety Reassessment Committee, for example. The decision was made after the public safety building funding failed at town meeting to have a reassessment committee. And I believe, Councilor Dombrowski, you actually served as chair of that at one point in time of that reassessment committee. So there is value of having elected officials serve as voting members on those temporary committees, but we don't have to do that. We could just have them be liaisons on that as well. I just wanted to put together some research just to show where we do and where we don't have town council members serve, or elected officials, serving as voting members.
I think that's my thing, is I think if it's a permanent committee, we shouldn't be asking someone to vote twice. You shouldn't vote twice on anything. Like, you shouldn't be voting in, voting in the Environmental Sustainable Committee and then voting here. Or you shouldn't, it would be like putting one of us on Finance Committee and having us vote there and then vote on again. Or that the vice versa, we vote here and then we recommend on the other one. I think having double voting doesn't feel comfortable.
Anything further from the councilors on just that discussion? If not, let me return to you, Councilor Dombrowski. Is your motion still in effect?
Yes, it was seconded. Yes.
It was seconded?
Yes.
Okay, so we can return to the motion that's been seconded, and that would be to
remove the mission statement, policies, and procedures that had apparently been adopted by the Environmental Sustainability Committee subsequent to its formation, and which are currently on the town's website.
Okay, we have a motion that's seconded. Councilor Chimes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's premature to be looking at this right now. There are a couple of pieces of information that I would like as context. One is I would like to understand the process that went into the adoption, or whenever the mission statement on the website was adopted. I don't think any of us have that information right now, and that's something that I would like to know. I also think there have been other boards and committees in towns that have adopted mission statements as well that we have never looked at. And so if we're going to have this discussion on the ESC, I would actually like, and I would ask through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Mayo, if we could have maybe a review of other committees as well to figure out, what processes have been followed around mission statements. I think this is a larger question that I don't think should be discussed as a one-off right now without some further context and information.
Is the further information, I'm just curious, is the further information not available because it precedes the individuals that are here at the moment?
I mean, I don't know. This is coming up on the fly, so none of us have really had, neither the ESC nor, kind of anyone else on this body has had the ability to prepare for this or do research into the process that was there, unless you went through and watched every ESC meeting for, 5 years.
Well, I don't need additional information, and Attorney Mullen, I'd be interested in your perspective on this as well. I'm looking here at what this body ended up creating, and under functions and duties, for instance, it says the committee's powers and duties are as follows. So they have self-defined what their powers and duties are. We had identified 6 categories that had been approved by a slim majority back in 2019. This lists out 13 different powers and duties. So that in and of itself is more than double what this body has granted authority and jurisdiction over. I don't see, and it also goes through committee rules and responsibilities, and it's far, far more expansive than what had ever been discussed, much less voted upon back in 2019 by this body. The prior mission statement appears to have aligned with what was actually voted upon. I'm not aware of any other appointed body that has the authority to redefine its powers, duties, and responsibilities. That feels highly irregular to me. And so if there are others, I encourage Councilor Chines to bring it at the next meeting. And if you find another one, I would vote the same way to have that taken off. But to give the impression through our public website that this Environmental Sustainability Committee has powers and duties that we have not bestowed upon that is basis for an immediate removal from the website and restoration of what was on the website, which is only that to which this body has actually approved.
So if you mean that as a legal question, I'd agree with you that no appointed body can adopt a mission statement that goes beyond the statement of purpose that was given it in its creational charge. Having said that, I haven't read this mission statement, so I'm not opining about whether it is or isn't beyond what's appropriate.
Councilor Vincent.
Yeah, if I can just direct everybody's attention to Wakefield bylaw 9-26, which is creation of appointed public body. I know this because the bylaws review committee back in 2017 put this one together. And real briefly, it says, with respect to each multiple member body, there shall be a list of designated powers and duties for appointed multiple member bodies, which the Environmental Sustainability Committee, as most of them are, appointed multiple member bodies. This shall be created by the appointing authorities. And then it says include intended purpose, powers and duties, terms of membership, things, so on and so forth, form requirements and whatnot. And when that was written and was adopted at town meeting, what it did is it put the responsibility on the town council to create the powers, to put together the list of designated powers and duties for every multiple member body. The intent there was not to have each body to have to go and do it themselves, but to do something kind of uniform and having the town council ultimately responsible for this. So if in 2019, in my opinion, if the town council approved the mission statement or powers, duties, and responsibilities of the Environmental Sustainability Committee, and they have not modified that since January 2019, then that which was passed by the council in January 2019 is the only mission statement that's legally binding currently for the Environmental Sustainability Committee. If there's another document passed by the ESC that's on the town's website, that, in my opinion, is null and void because that does not comport with 9-26 of the Wakefield bylaws. Only the town council can make a modification or a change to the powers and duties of the EFC since the town council made the decision back in January of 2019. So I don't know why we have to have a vote. You just take down what's on the website and you just put up under ESC what was approved back in January 2019. That seems pretty simplistic to me.
Councilor Butler.
Did we approve a mission statement or did we approve sort of powers and responsibilities? Because I think those are two different things. Like they can say whatever they want in their mission statement, but their powers and responsibilities are what we determined back in 19 and I assume have never changed. Although I don't know if we've never changed them. We may have like said, you know, we may have approved this. As far as I know, we may have approved this back in 21 when they expanded or at some other juncture. I guess I would probably at this point in time not go along with Ed's amendment because right now the other issue is you've got a bunch of ESC members who joined under one assumption of what the mission statement was, and if you're going to change the mission statement of their committee, I'm not sure that they would intend to be members. And I'm, you know, again, limited legal background, so you guys can.
Councilor Dombrowski?
But we're not changing the mission statement of what the ESC is. The mission statement of the ESC is what the mission statement of the ESC is. And if the ESC has on its own taken upon itself to expand its powers and duties and responsibilities, that's on them.
I'm asking, did we?
No,
did
we
craft it
never.
did we do it as a mission statement?
No, we had it delineated as as I believe 6 different powers and basically and responsibilities, if you will. It was candidly, it's more advisory than anything. So
Well,
even
it's,
what
it's
was
advisory no matter what.
right,
So,
but
I
but
think that's
what's
what we're
identified?
arguing over. I don't know.
Well,
but-
because when they're identifying themselves as having powers, there are not particular powers that are bestowed upon the ESC. It's really in a more advisory capacity. The powers and duties are as follows. That is not something that was ever approved back on January 20th, 2019. If you look to the meeting minutes, it lays that out. There was also a companion document that Madam Clerk included in the meeting minutes that broke down each of the delineated responsibilities for the creation of this committee. So there's,
But I'm asking,
it doesn't
as
matter.
the mission statement that they have posted, does that violate the 6 powers? Is that in any way in a
Yes.
violation of? And that's what I don't know.
Yes, the one what was approved, it was not even a page long. This is 2 pages long. And again, it delineates 13 different powers and duties.
But if they all fall under the same original 6?
They do not. It goes beyond.
Councilor Chimes?
So I think, again, this goes back to the fact that I think there are questions here that, we can't and shouldn't answer tonight. I think, you two are talking about a legal issue, which candidly I'd like Council Mullen to rein in on, which,
He did.
well, no, he said he hasn't actually looked at the document in the context of the discussion today. And so I would actually move that we table the motion to a future meeting when there is time to adequately discuss it and to have the right people prepare for the discussion.
I second that.
So we've got 2 motions and seconded.
Well, the motion to table supersedes the main
Okay.
motion.
Yeah, and I'd like to speak to it. I honestly think that, and I seconded Ed's motion, we probably don't need a motion to do that. I think that we should be cleansing these records if in fact they've been changed in the meantime. So if we don't have any record of taking any votes, Ed, on that, it should refer back to the one in 2019 and just leave it at that. I think any board member here can examine any other mission statement that's on any other committee. If they have any questions about it, we ought to bring it to Steve's attention. But why make motions we don't have to? I agree with Bob. It's really a non-motion. The fact that, if we don't have any record of changing it, should go back to the statement that you had referenced, Ed.
So I'll ask then, Mr. Mayo, that this revised mission statement approved by the ESC be taken out immediately from the town website.
We have no record of any change.
So I'm asking then on the record that it be removed from the website immediately. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm saying it solves the whole issue. It brings up the issue you brought up, is the fact that we should be looking at these mission statements, and if people are changing them, Jonathan, then we ought to look at it.
Yeah,
And getting back to what was said earlier about the membership, we have a very talented group of people here. And I'm not sure how it got off to track like this. And I had one meeting with you, you woman, and I appreciate it, respect you. I'd like to have a second meeting, and maybe as the liaison currently, or future, the non-voting liaison, whichever it is, that we could try to start working down the right path, so we understand where each is coming from, and I might be able to relate what your needs are back to the council. I'd be glad to do that.
So in that case, Mr. Chair, based upon the discussion we've had, I can withdraw my motion since we already have a commitment that the revised mission statement will be taken down to the website immediately. So there's no need for my motion then.
We have a withdrawn motion, therefore I don't think we need a motion to table non-motion.
No, through
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Chair, I would also ask that the larger question around mission statements, I think there's still context here that is important for us to understand. I don't think it's an immediate issue, but I do think that it's something that, does need to be kind of looked at and clarified. So I would ask through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Mayo, that we do spend some time looking at mission statements and so forth and things like that on committees, for each committee.
I agree, it merits research.
Yep.
You're okay with that, Town Administrator?
I am, yep.
Okay. Thank you all for coming in.
So I can change.
And I think we've pretty much exhausted the A and the B, or the 1 and the 2 issues for tonight. And as has been stated, and I started out with this, I do appreciate your efforts. I'm trying to get clarity, and I'm trying to get all of us on the same page. That's all I'm trying to do. So thank you very much for your efforts. And I've watched some of your other subcommittees, very interesting things going on. And I'll continue to watch them, whether my brothers and sisters do or don't.
Wonderful. And
So I know what's going on, all right?
we look
Thanks for
forward
coming
to-
in.
We look forward to working with you, and if I might add, I'm very excited about the potential solar on the Galvin. I see that's a topic for later as well.
Yeah, it is, and we have an RFP out. We have requests for proposals out, and Ann will be speaking to that. But our poor friends from FOLQ have had to live through a couple of hours, so I'm going to get to them next. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Item C is Friends of Lake Quannapowitt, monofilament disposal. Kindly identifies yourselves by name and address. And I will start out before you do that by saying a week or so ago, I was finishing a run at what I call the head of the lake, where Maine meets Lowell, and there we have anglers. And I thought to myself, you should walk down to the shore and see whether you can find any monofilaments. And I walked down there, and didn't I see one of those little guys glaring in the sun? And I pulled on it, and I pulled on it, and it was on a rock, and I pulled up a big stick, a branch, and walked it over to the garbage can. So they're out there. And anyway.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm Bill Conley, 83 Elm Street.
And Bree Reynolds, 41 Spring Street.
And President and Vice President of FOLQ respectively. We're very pleased to be here. Mike said be brief. We will be brief. We understand. A lot of work is accomplished here. Must be tiring. So we're gonna kind of run through this, and I think Karen McNamara, who we heard under public discussion, kind of set some of the background up. Some of the councilors here, and I kind of forget, we're at our annual meeting. So after the incident with the horned owl, great horned owl, who didn't survive, by the way, with great efforts by the fire, and we've got a couple of pictures. Bree will take us. We're going to double team this, take us through this. We decided to have Horn Pond into our annual meeting. Made a presentation. We had him into a monthly meeting. We learned an awful lot about the issue, how to approach it, how to work it through town, how to have a successful outcome, and they really did. They were very generous with their time. I think they made an impact at our annual meeting. We got a lot of conversation about it. So that's the background, and this is the follow-up. We've got a lot of information. Still a little bit of breeze. We just would like some direction to work with DPW on this. I think that'll be an effective way to be able to come back with a good plan, and we need a good plan. So I'll turn to Bree. She's done a lot of work on this. So.
Yes, so
Take it.
essentially we're here to ask for town council's guidance and direction to help us work with DPW to formulate a plan to handle fishing line disposal around the lake. And so that plan would include things like the design, location, the type of receptacle, the number of receptacles and where they're placed, how they are periodically emptied, and essentially trying to take what we've learned from Friends of Horn Pond and their successful program and find a solution that can be specific to Lake Quannapowitt and to the anglers that we have there, so that we have, the fun that they can have at the lake and the enjoyment that they get out of that, and also fewer disruptions to wildlife. And as Councilor McLean mentioned, disposing it into the trash can is a really good first step, and we do have trash cans already around the lake, but they're still very accessible to wildlife. And so the problem, is that it can come out because wildlife takes it out of the trash can. It can get entangled in the trash can, but it can also, blow out. The types of receptacles that Friends of Horn Pond has implemented, and that I think it's Boat USA Foundation, which runs the recycling program for the monofilament. It captures it really strongly into the receptacle so that there's no way it can get back out and injure wildlife or anything else. So yeah, we're just asking for some direction to be able to work with DPW to formulate a plan that we would then bring back to you for review and hopefully approval, but to get more input in and to make sure it's something that works for Lake Quannapowitt.
Any questions from councilors? Councilor Butler.
So now, after putting on my Greenpeace hat before, now I'm going to appear to be the monster. Look, the owl. What the owl was caught in, like, if you look at that picture, you can see the bobber right there. Like, what I don't really understand is we're proposing a solution here, but I don't think you're going to fix the problem, because it's not like people throw their fishing line away or throw it wherever it drops. The odd fishing line gets caught on any number of godforsaken stones or logs that we have in Lake Quannapowitt, and people's line snaps. They're not going to be able to go get. They couldn't get it when it was on their fishing line. Otherwise, they'd have reeled it in. So I don't think this really is going to solve what isn't a major problem. It feels like we're solving something because we got a picture of it versus, and we have a good story. It's, I'm generally opposed to these things that I feel like are feel-good solutions, but they're not actually going to solve anything.
Well, my comment would be that we got a lot of experience with conversations from the Friends of Horn Pond. They take a lot of this material out of receptacles every year and recycle it. I think we actually had a person from Horn Pond come to our meeting. Before she did, she stopped down at the south shore of the lake.
Is there boating at Horn Pond?
There's fishing. It's a different. There's a lot of fishing, a lot more fishing. But
There's
I don't
a lot
think
more fishing. There isn't that much fishing there. So are we going to do this at I think there's probably
Well,
just as
let
much
me
fishing at the
continue,
reservoir.
just so I can relate.
But I want to know if Horn Pond is a boating, and that's the other thing is I saw the receptacle was at the boat pond, or at the boat launch, which isn't where people fish.
So
anyway.
just as context, I don't believe that there's boating in Horn
Yeah,
Pond.
yeah,
Just
Okay,
having
I
just
don't
to
know.
circle it back.
spent a lot of time around there.
So to continue, that this person brought to our meeting a Tupperware container of what she collected in about 40 minutes on the south shore of Lake Quannapowitt. It was eye-opening. I think where this material, fish line hooks and monofilament, can't be retrieved, we would ask people, educate people, have a policy or a program in place where people are aware that they can get help to get this stuff out of the high trees or perhaps on a rock that's a little too far. But a lot of this can be retrieved. We have had retrieval of this material since this became more of an issue for us in the January-April timeframe during our regular cleanups, and we're getting a lot of this out. Now, we may reduce the problem by regular recycling, but you need the anglers, I think, help in this. Make it convenient for them. If we can eliminate this problem or reduce it, I think we'd be moving in the right direction. You do see a lot of these recyclable bins at different water bodies. I see them in Rhode Island regularly. I'm down there. So it is something that I think we should consider. Come back with a plan with the details and how we would discuss, different problems with implementation. We want a Wakefield-specific solution based on the Horn Pond experience.
I'll also say, if I can add to what Bill said, the part of this will probably part of the plan that we would envision would include an educational component to help people understand how they can help. Having people who walk the lake looking for that sort of thing. I know some people do that naturally, some people stumble upon it, but to know that they can then have a place to put it. I think some people will see it and leave it where it is. You know, part of it could also be a reporting piece where we've even talked, I think after Friends of Horn Pond did their presentation at our meeting, people came up and volunteered to be on the lookout for it. So there are people who are just interested in helping out with this anyway. I know we talked about how Wakefield has a lot of volunteers who help to get things going. And we've already had interest in people helping out also from the water too, because part of this is there are areas where if you're the fishing person and your fishing line gets stuck, you can't retrieve it because you don't have a boat available. But if you're able to have volunteers who are going on the water side in a kayak or something like that to help out, you know, retrieving it that way, I think there's a lot that can be done to help, even if there are some people who, you know, will leave it and walk away.
Did you have your hand up, Councilor? Councilor Carney?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think we could use the youth use of the boats down on the lake during the summer months to probably help us out in that thing. It's a shame to me when you're walking along in the natural world and you find you know, an animal suffering from something they shouldn't be suffering from. But I'm trying to understand what kind of receptacle you're kind of looking for.
Well, we have a, could you go to
Slide probably 3 or 4.
3 or 4?
And Ian,
Oh,
the
yeah.
screen keeps on going black.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I think Sherry must have done that.
So what's on the screen is the standard Boat USA receptacle. It's basically PVC pipe that has a screwable cap on the bottom part of it. And you put the fishing line through the top, it gets trapped into the bottom of the canister, and it gets pretty compacted, so it stays right in there. And it's hard to get other types of trash in there easily, bigger things and things like that. So that's one version. The colorful options, the red and blue, those are actually Karen McNamara, who wrote the letter, had put together some examples of what could be done, but obviously any sort of design or color scheme is possible. And there are other versions of the receptacles too, so it doesn't have to look like that if that's not something that we want to put out there. So,
That doesn't look expensive at all.
no,
No,
it's very inexpensive. Karen actually made those from materials at Home Depot, and she got the plans on Boat USA's website, so pretty simple.
And well, I think you need some signage, you know, educating people as they walk the lake.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, we anticipate working with DPW to the optimum spot. You know, we wanted to put the right number out in the right places with the right signage. And, you know, we're certainly aware that, you know, the lake is special. We need to be very, very careful, even with something like this, relatively small, but we don't want to be overpowering with this. We want it to work well, so to blend in and achieve the job.
Councilor Dombrowski?
I can't think of a single project while I've been on this council that's been presented by FOLQ that hasn't been well thought out, tastefully done, well executed, collaborative with our departments, especially DPW, who just come to us with tremendous ideas and improvements like on a regular basis. And your input is so incredibly valuable for our lake, which is you know, the crown jewel of our town. And we are all fortunate to have volunteers like yourselves and the rest of the group that is a part of this decision making and offering these suggestions. I think this is great. It addresses a need, and my biggest concern is the aesthetics, as you rightly point out, Mr. Spalding. But I'm also confident in your abilities to present us with plans that are going to be thoughtful, just like you always have. There is nothing that you have done around the lake when I run the lake that I think, gosh, I wish they hadn't done that. There are plenty of things when I run around the lake like, wow, like FOLQ did that and it made an improvement. And I think that this is just the latest in those efforts. So I applaud you for doing it. I look forward to the plans you're able to bring. I appreciate that you recognize the sensitivities, from aesthetic perspective, and I'm confident that you can achieve something that is going to be beneficial to our ecosystem around the lake. And for those curious, if the Google is to be believed, Horn Pond, it allows motorboats, but only electric motorboats. So no gas and no petroleum products, according to online. But I really look forward to this. I'm excited about this as an opportunity, and I thank you for presenting it, and I look forward to what you have to offer us in the coming months. Thank you.
And you said recycle, so are we able to recycle fishing line?
Yes, there's a special program, so you ship it into, I think it's Boat USA Foundation has a program where they actually recycle it. It's a particular recycling process for.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it doesn't, when you're not gonna get enough fishing line to like have it be worth recycling, but I mean, we should probably just throw it away, because I'm also betting dollars to donuts, you end up with more cigarette butts than fishing line. But I also think, like, and Ed, the Friends of Lake Hewitt has done great things around the lake. I mean, going along with self-storage facility, I might view as a concerning issue, but other than that, I just don't, I think this is, it's great, it's a feel-good story. Is it gonna save any birds? I don't know, possibly, but, it's just, it's not, this doesn't feel like highly impactful, but, right, it's not high cost either.
I was just mentioning to the chairman, I actually have a sweater that is made of recycled fishing lines. So, there's clothing now that's made from nets and lines and the like. So I don't know if we're going to be gathering those amounts, but I mean, there are opportunities, certainly.
I don't think anybody sees it running the lake either. I think like, there's no part of the lake that is right on the water. So, like, let's, you can find it on the beach, you can find it in the rocks, but I don't see it as a big problem because A, it's not that big a fishing place, and B, it's, it's more like and the fishing is so scattered on the lake as well. So where are you putting them?
Yeah, there'll be a few challenges, but that's where the DPW experience, when it comes back to you and the public input, I think we'll get additional information that could be very, very useful for the size, scale, where, and whatever. And if it's a problem that goes away, I think that'll be great. And then these particular installations can go away too, until it becomes back again. But I don't know if that's likely to happen, but if it reduces it and it saves.
If it saves just one
Saves
bird.
one.
I mean, that's,
on an
you
annual
get on
basis,
the talk
yeah.
of like what we pay for different things. That's, I guess, what I would say.
Yeah, but I think it educates people to be more educated when it comes to disposal and leaving things and so on and so forth. And we do a great job on that. The lake is markedly cleaner from trash than it ever was. And that's been because groups like FLQ and individuals take care of it. They go by it, they bring their own bags. When we say we're gonna have a cleanup at different parts of the lake with the school kids or adults or our corporate partners come by and they do a great job on this. And I think this is just an extension of that into an area that it also, besides birds, it also could harm kids. And during the cleanups, we always warn them, we tell them to be careful, keep adults near them, but it just makes no sense to leave this material on the lake. So let's come back to you. Let's get, collective ideas, suggestions, and let's put in a plan that's workable for us.
Councilor
That's
Chung.
the hope.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I had the chance to see the presentation at the FOLQ annual meeting, and I do think that this is an exciting opportunity. When I've done kind of the lake cleanups, there is actually a lot of filament there, more than you realize if you actually walk down to the shore and start picking things up. So I do think that there is an issue here, and what I'm kind of excited about this is a pretty easy, low-cost solution. I mean, we talked about, I think the Friends of Horn Pond talked about it being like a few $100s. You know, I mean, it was just a small number, a small cost for the impact that they were able to have and what they were able to collect. So I'm excited to have you guys connect with the DPW and come back to us with a recommendation. And thank you for the work on this too.
And I would simply add, you know, it is low cost, it's low impact. I'm not as, you know, I don't know if
Do
it's.
we honestly believe that people who leave their fishing line now are then going to, like, all of the sudden be like, who leave it on the ground now, that all of the sudden they're going to be like, oh no, I used to just throw it on the ground, but now that I have a convenient receptacle, which currently would be the trash can, now I have a nice convenient place to use it. Do you think those people are going to do it? No, they're not going to do it.
Maybe not, but I've managed to find one myself on first look. You know, can't build a sweater out of it, but I found one the first time I went down.
And what'd you do with it? You threw it in the trash.
Yeah, and I would have put it in the receptacle if we had one.
Right.
Right?
Great.
But the point here is that anytime you get people interested in doing this around the lake, whether it's in a kayak, whether it's in a hip wader, or whether it's Mike in his running shoes hoping he doesn't embarrass himself by falling into the lake when he's pulling out the filament, you're also liable to think about, and I'm going to grab that candy wrapper too. Oh, and there's a can over there. So I just think it's got
Ancillary benefits. That'd be
ancillary
good.
benefits, my friend, and very low cost. You're a fiscal guy, so, you know, hop on board here. Councilor Carney.
I'm just going to add that, Tom, I remember when there wasn't a bottle bill.
Oh, yeah.
And educating people helps to clean things up. So just the educational factor has a place there. The fact that people are going to see the signage, they're going to look, they say, oh my God, we didn't know. We don't think about that problem. And then all of a sudden, as you mentioned, Jonathan, if you really put your boots on and walk down by the lake, I'm not talking about shoreline across from your house. I'm talking about, down on the other side of the lake. You'll be surprised what you find. And that's what I think that they're addressing here.
And we have people that fish at Main and Low, plenty of them. We have some people that fish over at Veterans. Saw them the other day. So, you know, I think it's a low impact, low cost, good idea, can only produce positive results. Assuming we're done, I wouldn't be able to know if Councilor Vincent wanted to ask a question because I can't see him. So speak up, Councilor Vincent, if you want to get involved. Otherwise, if we don't hear from Councilor Vincent, do we need a motion on this, Town Administrator?
No, we can, I think the consensus is to work with DPW
I
and come
think so.
back, and I think that happens
Talk with
all the
Joe
time with
and-
FOLQ anyway, so.
We'll
it's
talk
just
with
another
Joe
part of
and
it.
see how he wants to handle
Yep.
it and
Yep,
come up with a
Yep.
little bit of timeline and at some point come back.
yep. Keep it
with the plan.
where it should be, keep it minimal. You
Yeah.
want to keep us a little in the
So-
lake, aesthetics,
Yeah.
sign everywhere, sign, you know, all that stuff. We want to stay away from that, and I know you guys know all that.
Yeah.
So thanks so much. And I really appreciate a group coming into us like this and asking us first, and apprising us of what they're doing. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you.
Night.
Which I believe leads us to North Ave progress, and I'm guessing we might have an engineer online because I don't see him here.
We might.
We might?
Yeah, we do. He is coming over right now. I don't know why you guys can't see us, but yes, we're
I can
here.
see, we can see you and Bob Vincent right now, Sherry.
Oh, lucky you. Yeah, okay. Mike is, Bill should be, there we go.
Yep,
Bill, can
there
you
we
hear
go.
us?
Yep, I got you.
Okay, great.
Hey,
Well, hey there, folks. Thanks for having me. So kind of give you a quick update. I know you have a pretty long agenda here and a bunch of other items you got to get to. So basically, quick update. We were a little delayed in having some of our drainage work done. So our drainage subcontractor completed some catch basin and manhole work at Fielding Street last week. That was delayed by probably about 3 to 4 weeks or so from what we were anticipating. So that pushes back our schedule pretty significantly. We still have some curb ramp repair work that has to be done, and then some trench milling and paving that has to be done. So I'm thinking by the time we get paving squared away, we're probably going to be mid to late October at this point. which then would push us for pavement marking probably about a week later than that. So we're thinking like probably towards the end of October that I'd have everything pretty much wrapped up out there from a construction standpoint. And then we'd be looking potentially at flex post installation. But I mean, to be honest with you, I think we would probably be deploying it for a couple of weeks. So, my recommendation now would be let's plan to do that in the spring at this point, considering, we're really not going to have the construction completed until late October. So that's really all I have at this point.
Okay, so, but you should have the lanes redone and the bike path and the buffer zone, that should all be done by late October, Bill?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions from counselors? Counselor Dombrowski?
I think this is really the calm before the storm, and I don't think most of the residents have any idea of what they're in for with respect to North Ave. While I understand, Bill, that it would be of limited duration, I think having the flex posts out at the end of October actually lets people know what they're to be expecting if they remain in place. And so even if we have them out for, say, a month, that gives us a good opportunity to get a lot of feedback from residents, and then we can spend the months of December, January, February, et cetera, having to discuss and make any modifications based upon the feedback we receive. So while I understand it would be late in time, I would actually be in favor of putting them out there in the hopes that we could at least get a month's worth of feedback clocked from the community, because I do fully expect that there is going to be significant community input once these go up. And I don't think that kicking the can to the spring to allow that to happen is going to make a lot of practical sense.
Okay.
Is that a hand, Counselor?
Have we bought the fence? Have we bought the posts yet?
Yep, we have.
Oh, so if we've already paid for them and we have them, then you probably might as well put them in. I don't think the fence post, the only reason why I would say to delay putting them in is if it ends up being an unmitigated traffic disaster through October, through November and into January, we may not get to do the fence posts because we might just roll it back.
Well, we would remove them for snow removal, right? So we were thinking probably mid-November, maybe late November, that they would be taken down. So the question is, do we want to deploy it for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks? But I'm hearing from Councilor Dombrowski that he thinks that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that probably makes sense. I don't think the posts are going to be the problem that the townsfolk end up in arms over. If we experience an uprising about the lane, it'll be because of the lane. It won't be because of the posts. But so the posts are, put them in, I guess, unless people think otherwise.
Counselor Carney?
And Bob's. Yes.
Okay.
Let me say this, and I drive in Somerville all the time. And then just recently, I did some driving down to Salem, because I saw things in Salem I didn't like. So I made a point of going there. With the 4-foot, recently passed 4 feet lane for bicycles, okay? And I'm talking about myself bicycling around the lake, okay? In the current situation on North Avenue, people are gonna go 2 feet on the other side of the medium strip to get around a bike, okay? Now, you're making 9 feet off of them, okay? And you folks voted for it, okay? So I want them implemented as soon as possible, because I want the people in North Ave who actually have no clue what's going on, okay? The communication in this community is not what we think it is, okay? You have to knock on people's door to let them know things are going on, okay? There are going to be people down there who are saying, well, what are they doing? What have they done to my street? But that's for us to hear, okay? That's what we're here for. I'm not trying to rewrite the record here, but I think we should put them up as soon as possible to make sure people realize what's going to happen. Because next spring, late spring, when the farmers market comes back again, okay, and people are looking for a place to park, okay, the farmer's market is gonna feel the impact. 50 cars for the last 4 weeks, around 10:30, 11 o'clock, are parked on North Avenue, illegal or not, okay? This past Saturday, it was even worse, because they had the band over in the parking lot. They took away 30 spots over there. So there's gonna be an impact on this.
Maybe we move the farmer's market.
Yeah. And what I also want to do is the contract that the police department is looking at, the traffic safety committee is looking at, we'll look at the history. So I want to see the impact of now. I think you can go back 18 months, Steve, according to what I read. You go back 18 months historically when you hire them. So we want to be able to look back 18 months when there was nothing there, okay? And then find out what the impact is 18 months later. Because I mentioned earlier, it's going to affect Main Street and it's going to affect Lowell Street, okay? Waze does that. If you don't travel to work every day, you wouldn't realize that. But Waze can take you many ways. And so there's my concern. So I'd like to get it up as soon as possible. The council at large voted for it. Let's get it up and let's test it. Thank you.
Councilor Vincent, did you have your hand up, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Chair McLean. When we voted on this a couple months ago, Bill, the expectation was we might be able to get the post by the end of August, sometime in September. Yep. And they could have been up for 2.5 months. Because remember you mentioning the mid-November date as the date that they would have to come down. My concern is we're not going to get these things until late October. Having the manpower of having the DPW go out and put those posts up for maybe no more than 2 weeks just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. What would be the expense to the taxpayer of having to have DPW go out and put those up and then 2 weeks later take them down?
It's a tough question. I mean, realistically, we're just talking about, deploying some of our highway group to go do that. So it's a couple of laborers for a day, maybe half a day.
Would you be able to discern much information by having them out there just for 2 to 3 weeks?
Well, I mean, I think you're going to get some comments, I would imagine, right off the bat. So if that's what the council's looking to get, you would definitely, I'm sure, hear that. Any change, you know how it goes. Any change that we make to any road or anything we do that has a change, you're going to hear some comments on it. So you get a flavor for that right off the bat. But again, we did vote to deploy, so I'm willing to do whatever the majority of the council wants me to do. If we want it deployed, we can deploy it. If we choose that we don't, I'm happy not to deploy it. Either way.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Chines, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, we're talking about the end of October, but I think we all know that, there's variability in that, right? A lot of this work is weather dependent, and so it could be earlier, it could be later. I guess from my perspective, I would give the DPW some discretion here. If we think we can have the flex posts up for a month, great. I mean, if we're talking about 2 weeks, I just feel like it's almost too confusing to residents and motorists to kind of take something up and take it down almost immediately. And so I guess from my perspective, Mr. Renaud, if you're looking for direction, at least from this one counselor, I'd like to see where we are, as we get into October. And if it looks like we're talking about, a week or two, I'm not sure that it's worth the effort now, and then I would wait until the spring. But if things go well and we can get a month out of them, great. Let's put them up and see what happens.
Councilor Butler.
I may be confused here. Installing the posts isn't going to change the size of anybody's car lane, are they?
No.
Right. So whether we put the posts in or not, the traffic impact is going to be exactly the same. So that's the thing is in some ways maybe delaying putting in the posts so that people can see this is the impact of having a bike lane with or without the posts. Posts don't really matter. So that's, maybe we want to get feedback on that versus, you know, the thing you don't want, I wouldn't want us to do is to think that putting the posts in and then getting a lot of negative feedback and feeling like, oh, well, maybe we'll just take the posts out and then everything will be hunky-dory.
Well, we're taking them down in November anyway for the winter because of the
Yeah,
the
so
snow
yeah,
impact.
I'm fine not putting them up until spring as well, and then, because the posts don't change the driving experience, which is, I think, what we're all dancing around here. But maybe you guys think differently.
Councilor Dombrowski?
The posts do change the driving experience, and if you've ever driven along a long straight stretch where there are posts going down, you do modify the way in which you drive. You know, your perception is different. You inherently are going to stay further off the posts because, you know, depending on the size of your vehicle you're operating and the like, which is going to migrate you closer to the middle lane, if not over the middle lane, depending on the size of the how wide the lane is. I think it'll take about 48 hours for us to receive ample feedback from the community once these posts are up. And I think that is important feedback that we should be receiving to allow us time to be able to process it and discuss it in the months when the posts are taken down. And then we can make determinations about whether it's appropriate to have them go back up again in the spring, any modifications to the lanes and the like. Candidly, we're talking about DPW employees that are salaried. And so if the highway department needs to spend a few hours putting up posts and taking down posts, that falls well within, you know, the work that they do. But this notion that we're going to somehow give the impression to folks that we're done with the project come November because we're not putting the posts up, I think is somewhat disingenuous, candidly. And I think we have the ability now to test this. We always intended for the posts to be up for a short period of time in the fall. That hasn't changed, you know, Mr. Renault. That amount of time sounds like has contracted now potentially.
Exactly.
But I mean, but the thinking was always, let's put the posts up, you know, mid to late fall, whenever they're able to be installed, and then from there we'll get feedback, and then we can reassess. And to withhold these poles, flex poles going all the way down that roadway, I think is not giving the residents the full picture of what would the intended, you know, consequence of a number of votes here in this town council we're meant to have. So I think it's imperative that we do have it up. And if it is for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever the case is, then so be it. That's 2 or 3 weeks that we're gathering feedback from residents who are actually experiencing it. And if they say, hey, you know what, the posts are fine, that's fine. I think that we're going to hear visually that people are going to hate them. Just the visuals alone, people are going to hate them. If you've been through Salem, it is post City USA now.
Yes, it is.
Everywhere you go, like literally. But you know, that's the feedback that residents are entitled to provide to us, and I think we then have to answer to that. But the idea of kicking this into the spring just because we may have them up for 2 or 3 weeks versus 4 weeks, there's no basis for doing that. This was supposed to be put them out there, let's see what people say, and then, you know, we can make any adjustments. And I think we lose that opportunity by not putting them up in the fall.
Any other town councilors? I would just say that, Councilor Vincent, hand up?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Chair McLean. I would just respectfully disagree. Factually, the vote that we took earlier in the summer was the expectation would be put up in late August. They would be up for 2.5 months. So now we're going from a period of 10 weeks down to 2, not a period of 4 weeks down to 2. I was very clear in going back and looking at what we discussed and what we voted on, and Mr. Renault at the time was optimistic, as he should be, that he might be able to get these in by the end of August, early September. I do think there is a considerable difference between having them up for 2.5 months by having them up for 2 weeks. But if the council decides they want to put them up for 2 weeks, I'll go along with that. But that was not the expectation that we had when I took my vote a couple of months ago.
Okay, expectations change. We've had some close votes on many of these street-related and pole-related issues. I've always thought that I actually would disagree with one thing Councilor Carney said, because when I was walking in the parade, I heard plenty on North Ave. I would agree with Councilor Butler that I think the biggest issue is going to be the lanes. We have very large wheelbase trucks and the vehicles being pulled behind them on all of these roads. Our own trucks, gas and light, DPW, are sometimes these F-350s and these large trucks, and the trucks that come out of gas and light. I've watched them on this road and just tried to figure out, is this really going to work? But I've always been of the opinion, let's put it out there, and instead of worrying about policies, let's see how it works. Let's put it out there. So I'm going to disagree with my friend Councilor Vincent on this one, and I'm going to say that it's better for us to put it out there and let the townspeople experience as much of it as they can, and then get back to us with how they feel. So that's where I'm likely to vote on this. I assume we're probably going to have a motion one way or the other.
Can I make a suggestion that there's no reason why we need to have a vote today. He's not done with the work. Why don't we just table this to a future meeting when we have more information on the schedule?
Well, you've indicated that you just leave it to the DPW. I'm not inclined to do that. I'm inclined to have a vote.
And I'm comfortable
So
having a vote. Again, I would just say, there's no reason why that vote has to happen today.
So I will make a motion. I'll also note that the people who voted for the poll seem to be the people who are most inclined to not want to put them up this fall. But I'll make a motion
Can
that...
we not guess on
Yeah.
how other counselors are voting? That seems to be happening a lot
I'm
lately.
not talking about voting, I'm talking about comments.
But there's no motion. None of us has said anything.
You
So
vote.
I
There's
think
been
can
plenty
we
of
just
comments.
not, can we not guess how people are going to vote? Let us just vote.
Sure. So I will make a motion that DPW is to install the poles along North Avenue as soon as the conditions allow for such installation.
Second that motion.
Motion's been seconded. Any further comment by councilors? I think we're commented it out. I'm going to take a roll call vote. Councilor Vincent,
Yes.
Councilor Butler,
Yes, I think. But I'm surprised by his vote, but yes.
well, as Councilor Butts said, we never know how someone is going to vote. This is a little democracy here. Councilor Butt,
Yes.
Councilor Dombrowski,
Yes.
Councilor Carney,
Yes.
Councilor Chines.
Abstain.
And I vote yes, so Sherry, that's 6-0 with one abstention. Councilor Chines.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you very much for hanging in with us late tonight, Mr. Renaud.
No problem. Have a good evening, folks.
Not you,
Bye, Bill.
Bob, the engineer. There you go.
Mr. Chair, can I
Mr. Calls? Yes, sir.
Could I suggest maybe we take item F out of order just so that poor Ms. Waite can go home?
But isn't poor Ms. Waite very much enjoying the show? I think that's an excellent idea, Councilor Chance.
Thank you. Good evening, Ann Waite, Public Works. I'm here to talk about the solar array project. So we put out an RFP, request for proposal, 2025-2 solar array, Galvin Middle School. We had, so far, we've had 10 firms or individuals pull the plans. Tomorrow, there is a pre-proposal site visit, so it's mandatory. So if they're interested in putting in a bid, they have to be at the middle school tomorrow at 11. We'll go on the roof. They can compile questions. The questions need to be in writing, and they can pass them in and then they'll be shared with anyone who attended the walkthrough. The proposals are due on Thursday, September 26th at 11 a.m. They include two separate parts. One's a technical proposal and one's a price proposal. So they'll all be evaluated, reviewed, rated on a ranking system that's in the proposal. And then we hope to have that done, finished, and a recommendation to you around October 11th. There are a lot of requirements in the RFP, things like minimum warranty, so there's 25 years on the panels, 10 years on the inverters, 5 years on the racking, 5 years on the workmanship, so a lot of thought got put into it. We had help from the Gas and Light Department. Mr. Mullen helped. We talked to the city of Newton because they had recently done a proposal, so we put a lot of work into it, so hopefully we will get some aggressive and well-priced proposals.
Would you like to add anything, Town Administrator?
No, I think that Ann completely covered it. I think it was a great job by our staff, great collaboration with the MLD. They really are basically all in on this project, which is nice.
Yeah, I would tell the council that I attended a meeting with the Town Administrator with Gas and Light, and it was a very, very cooperative meeting. Any other questions from councilors at this point?
Just great work.
Great, thank you very much.
Great work, thank you very much.
Thank you for hanging tight with us.
Yeah, sorry for the late night. So, moving back to item 5E, bond rating.
Okay, first I want to take, if it's okay, you're throwing it to me?
I'm throwing it to
Yes.
you. Yes, sir.
I just want to, I've been through these bond ratings a number of times, and I certainly want to thank your financial team, John McCarthy, our town treasurer, Kevin Gill, town accountant, Kathy Kelly, tax collector, and Victor Santinello, our assessor. You know, combined with me, we have over 120 years of experience, and I think that that resonates with the rating agencies. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank all the department heads who work very hard, along with all of their employees from top to bottom, you know, who are very proud of the fact that, you know, we do stay within our budgets. They are very vigilant and they really care, and I think that that really resonates, and I think the results show at the end of every year. Also, certainly the support of the town council, the finance committee, the school committee, and the public who has worked with us at open town meeting. And open town meeting isn't the easiest form of government, as we all know, but I think the public has been very supportive. And this has led to the last 6 years of our having a AAA bond rating, which is how long we've been with S&P, that we've held that AAA bond rating. So I'm very proud of that. And I'm very proud of the fact that we do maintain a very balanced approach, and I think to budgeting and to how we handle things. And I think the town council is to be really commended for this, along with the finance committee in particular, is that we do fund our priorities, and there's a lot of talk about priorities. But we've also been very good over the years about funding pension on a good schedule, funding OPEB on another good schedule that not many communities do at all, certainly not our size. We have a very good capital plan that we go forward and we update every year. And all of these are embedded in our budget. I think that's very important, that OPEB, pension, priorities, they're all embedded. We're just not kind of waiting to do this later on. And and capital too. We know we're going to be around $2.5 million in capital every year. And it took us a long time to get there. We do long-term forecasting. And I will say that we have some fun with that. I have a lot of fun with that. And for those of you who've been on the finance committee, we have a lot of fun with that. And sometimes we argue, right, Doug? But we enjoy it. Never. We enjoy it. I think also it's very telling that we do have a policy that not only maintains reserves, but we do share that success with the taxpayer. And we kind of formalized that a couple of years ago in our revenue policy. And I think that's a great indication. However, I tell you, I'm always very nervous when we receive a surveillance call, because things can change. I'm very aware of the fact, like any credit report, you know, when you go and borrow a mortgage on your house, all of a sudden your credit report goes down, because guess what? You owe more money now. I do think that there can be changes. There can be changes in the local markets, in the federal markets, the countrywide markets, and how the rating agencies view Massachusetts and Wakefield. And I was very nervous this time because we were going out to borrow $200 million, and that's a big nut for a community our size. But I got to tell you, I felt very good too, because we had the best year ever. We closed the best year ever in fiscal year 2024. We have over 15 million when you add up free cash and stabilization. 171 million in the pension fund, increased from 158 the year before. $33.4 million in OPEB on a schedule that not a lot of people are doing. Our local receipts are up. Our tax taxes collect at a very good level, 98, 99% a year. Kathy does a great job there. And as I mentioned, we return to the budget. The department heads return to the budget every year. No ARPA is used for recurring expenses anymore. And I think that's important. We didn't use ARPA to plug a hole in the budget like some communities did. We're using it for some legacy projects. We kind of talked about some of them tonight. However, as I went through this, some of the questions were a little bit nerve-wracking with and some of the comments from the rating agencies. Never had this question before. Are you worried about taxpayer fatigue? It was an interesting question that I got. Kind of said no. Yeah, no, we have a very good collection rate. And that this is outside of 2.5. It's a debt that excluded, but there was still some questions about that. There was some pushback in where we thought our revenues were going to be, our reserves were going to be over the years, and that we have been maintaining right around a 10%, and I think that's good practice. That's very good practice. Hard to get 10% reserves. Took us a long time to get there. Heard a little bit that, geez, for a community that are AAA communities with a debt like this, you should have 15% reserves. That's hard to get to. I think that's hard to get to. One way we could get it that they mentioned was, well, maybe if you didn't put so much into OPEB, that would be a better thing to do. I mean, this was mentioned, and then in the report, when I get to it, they said you have an OPEB obligation that you need to get to. So there was some mixed things. So I gave them some pushback on this, and we went back to them a little bit and talked about it. And I'm happy to say that we did maintain our AAA bond rating. I was very happy about that, albeit with a negative outlook, and it's in saying that really our increase in debt, and it is a big increase in debt, could increase fixed costs to levels that are significantly higher than other AAA peers. All right, I get it. We increased our debt a lot this time. Well, I don't know what community our size doesn't. That's building a high school, so that's not a lot we can do there. But, so I got a little bit perturbed, but as I read the report, I did feel a little bit better. And they seem to contradict themselves, in my opinion. Number one, the town has demonstrated strong pension and OPEB funding discipline and has been proactively managing these liabilities, but the annual costs are above average compared with peers. Okay, I get that. Likewise, reserve levels have been stable and strong, but do not align with AAA peers. Wakefield has a track record of strong budgetary performance we expect to continue, supported by strengthened management's forward-looking planning. I thought that sounded pretty good. They did cite that our maintenance of strong reserves and positive performance, which has been largely consistent over the last decade, although we view fund balance to be weaker than peers. Again, I don't know who those peers are. Are they Cambridge? I agree. We don't have as much money as Cambridge. But when I look to our other surrounding communities, I think that they're stronger than them. My favorite, and I'll say it for my guys that work with me, very strong and experienced management team with strong policies and practices under our financial management assessment criteria and strong institutional framework scores for Massachusetts municipalities. So those things please me. I don't like even getting a little negative tick from them, but that's okay. So where do we go from here? I think that we need to be ever vigilant, and I think we are very vigilant, and we'll continue to be very vigilant, and we'll continue to work hard on everything we do. They did say that they could return the outlook to stable if the town's additional debt plans do not result in a diminished capacity to maintain operating balance, and if needed, grow reserves. I think our plan is that we want to do that. That's what our plan is going forward. And finally, they put in, however, pension and OPEB costs are currently manageable, and we expect they will remain so over outlook period, particularly given the strong base and budgeting practices, which we expect will continue to support stable operations. So I think in one point they look at our debt and say we will continue. One thing that really frosted Dan Sherman on FinCom, because I talked to him about this, was they made a discussion about our discount rate on our pension. And they said that they felt that we were being, I guess, a little bit too positive in the outlook going forward, and using a rate of, I think, over 7%, 7.4%. They thought a 6% was more realistic. I don't think we've ever used a 6%, and I'll defer to Mr. Butler on this. But Dan felt that that was just not under acceptable accounting, actuarial accounting practices, and that was just a very bad statement that anyone could make. So I felt a little better about that because I thought that we were being even conservative at 7+%. But we'll continue to look at policy. I may want to talk to this board about our policy in there that talks about 10% and having 10% reserves and then not going the full 2.5. I think that's something we should have a discussion about. We will continue to look at revolving accounts. We've made great progress with the schools in that regard, that making sure that revolving accounts actually pay for the service that they're giving. And we'll continue to be ever vigilant on everything. I think that our contracts are good. I think our policies are good. I think our reserves are good. I think our collections are good. And I think the future is very bright. If you look at all this construction that we've had, and our construction fees or our building permit fees have gone through the roof, that does, in the last 2 years, that translates into taxpayer growth, tax levy growth down the road when those things get built. So, I kind of went from really ticked to miffed to happy to, I don't know, disgruntled at the end. But the bottom line is that we did maintain the highest rating you can get, albeit with, they'll be looking at that closely over the next few years. And we will know this week what's happening with those bids, which is the real thing, right? What do the bids come in at? And next week we'll be voting on that on the 16th. Sorry about that. So I'm happy to take any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Chines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Mayo, for the sort of the play-by-play in terms of the report. I mean, it's helpful to hear how the surveillance call went in addition to what's sort of documented in the report. The reserves question to me is a puzzling one because, I also have kind of looked at our reserve position as positive. I did do some research in the Division of Local Services, and, when you look at our stabilization plus free cash, we actually aren't sort of quite as up there as I thought we would be. We're sort of middle of the road in stabilization. We're actually in sort of the bottom half when it comes to free cash. Now, what I haven't done is kind of balance that up against kind of OPEB and pension liabilities. And if, the communities that are above us have done that by shortchanging OPEB, I don't think that's the right approach either. And I think Councilor Carney and I both sort of guffawed when you mentioned that comment from the surveillance agencies. But I do think that it's worth spending some time and looking at this and maybe looking at the policies again because, while it feels to me that 10% is the right number, particularly because, again, we funded OPEB, we also do have the special ed stabilization account, which doesn't really get counted in the state metrics. It feels like having sort of a shock to revenue of more than 10% in any given year, even in any 2-year period, seems incredibly unlikely. It does at least sort of give me some pause that there's some time and effort that should be spent looking at this and just figuring out how to benchmark ourselves against other communities and some of those other competitors, if you will, that the rating agencies put forward. So maybe my request would be twofold. One is if we could kind of spend some time, maybe come back at a later meeting and look at some of that benchmarking data just to really get an understanding as to where we sit. And then the second request, I think, for all of us is just to make sure that we continue to be mindful of why we have fiscal policies, right? We have fiscal policies that cover a wide variety of areas so that we make responsible decisions and so that we're guided to do fiscally prudent things. And I think this underscores to me that this is a time where, understanding why we have those policies in place and, trying to hew to the spirit of why we created them is something that's important. So certainly something I expect we'll talk through as we get to budgets
I
in the
talked,
spring and the fall.
talked with a friend of mine that's in another community who was very upset that they ended up at AA2 or AA plus, whatever it is. And he says, I think my reserves, we're pretty much the same in those areas, but nothing in OPEB. And they had just made token 20 grand a year and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I
was
think
the
that's where,
difference.
again,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're
Yeah.
putting 15% in reserves, but you have nothing in OPEB, I mean, I feel like we're in a stronger position than that if you look at it holistically. And that's where, again, I did some cursory research on DLS, but I think figuring out how we put all those pieces together to get a true comparison, I think is going to be important.
Councilor Carney, had you had your hand up?
I did, but I prefer to have it. Fine. I just remember Dan speaking at town meeting, and, whenever Dan talks about, his concerns, it makes you think. We had a reduction in our rainy day account. He was concerned about how that was not sustainable. And,
Yeah, right.
and I'm just questioning how did that fit into?
Well, we ended up the year much better than, which Dan did not know, none of us knew at that time. Okay, so that forecast is kind of predicated at the time that, he didn't have all the numbers in there.
Yeah.
So I think he was very happy with the numbers at the end of the year. But that still doesn't mean that you still need to look as you play that out. It's still an issue, or could be an issue.
Councilor Dombrowski.
Thank you for this insight, Steve. This, I'm sure, will come as no surprise, but to the question of, do we have taxpayer fatigue, or are we worried about that? I am absolutely worried about taxpayer fatigue, and I have been for a very long time. We are taxing too much, and we are spending too much, is the bottom line. And most taxpayers haven't even felt the full impact of the high school in their tax bills yet. And,
correct.
And they will. And it behooves us and every department to do everything that we possibly can to mitigate the impact of the high school increase on taxes by looking at the way we spend. We cannot look at this 3%, 3% across the board for every department and doing what they want to do. Business as usual just cannot continue to be the case here. We have a very different scenario now, whereby it was, as you point out, 200 million in borrowing now that comes into the mix. Every taxpayer is going to feel that in a meaningful way in their tax bills. We have an obligation, from my perspective, to do everything possible to try to offset that by savings in other ways. And that's, we have to think about how we're operating government, and we have to do it better. We have to do it leaner in some way. So any of the conventional approaches or wisdom, I think, get thrown out the door. I think we're at this breaking point now. People are finding it harder and harder to continue living here. And, I respect the high school project. I know that it was overdue, but we also have to respect the taxpayer and recognize that they're going to be taking a significant financial hit to fund that project. And we have to find ways that we're able to offset it. And I leave it to the department, Steve, to look at that. And these are not going to be easy discussions to have, and I recognize that. But as you've always pointed out, if we lose the AAA bond rating, that also impacts. We've also enjoyed a savings, interest savings as a result of that. We don't want to lose that. And I mean, when we're talking about, basically a negative prospect going forward, that's not a good position to be in. And I think we can all say as much.
I think one thing that they did like, they being the raters, was the tax relief that we have done for lower incomes.
Yeah.
That was matching the circuit
Mostly
breaker from the
seniors,
state.
yes.
For the senior tax relief.
Yes.
And they were very impressed with that, and the fact that, that is again spread around the rest of the taxpayers in that category, and that was voted on by town meeting, I think unanimously when we did it. So twice. I think that was. But your point is well taken.
But well before budgets come before us. I mean, this is the formation process. This is when departments think about things. I mean, I think about the FTEs that we added that I raised objection to last budget cycle. We can't keep going on like this. We just can't. And I think that now that even the credit rating agency is telling us as much. it's a real concern, and I think it's something that we have to be able to figure out a way to manage this. And it's going to be some tough decisions and some tough realities that we're going to be facing in the upcoming cycle. Unrelated to that, I know you were talking about these other AAA communities, and they're kind of benchmarking us against them. Do you have a sense of who those other communities are that we're going against? Who is the 15% OPEB at our level and the like?
They're not members of my group. I know that.
I mean, do they publish that kind of information?
There's
I mean, do we?
45 of them in the state.
Okay.
47 of them in the state. Andover, North Andover, Reading. Woburn is actually AAA as well. Melrose and Stoneham are AA+. I can send out that list. I have that list of, but and sorry, didn't want to.
I just want to.
I was going to say there's also all this information's on the DLS website, so it is all publicly available.
But what is it about those communities, or can we dive into what it is about those communities that cause them to not have the same AAA, but with caveat of, hey, your futures are looking great? I mean,
Most of the biggest issue is, what do we have outstanding in terms of debt, total debt outstanding?
Oh, with this is going to increase it from 38 million to 238 million.
Right, so
Yeah.
that's the biggest issue, is
Yeah.
one of the reasons why we're gonna get a negative is because we're doing a huge issuance.
Right.
But, I mean, I grant you, we do wanna keep the AAA. There are only 287, I think, communities across the country that are AAA rated. The only caveat I would say, and like this is, Dan would shoot me for this, but, by the way, the difference between Melrose's borrowing costs and Stoneham's borrowing costs and ours, it isn't that much. There's not, like, as an investor, you don't pay a whole lot less for AA+. AA+, you think you're getting your money back still pretty much guaranteed. So it's a few basis points here and there, but it's not like we go from paying 3% as AAA to paying 3.5% as AA+. You go to paying 303 or 305 or something along those
Our
lines.
bond counsel is saying between 5 and 10. Yeah, but it depends.
So
Still a
yeah,
lot.
great. Oh no, sorry. The only other thing I'd add is, like, by the way, economically, we're still in fantastic shape. Like, people are not. I know Ed was talking about, like, the concerns and, like, yes, people are concerned about their taxes. They're always concerned about their taxes, but that's not what's creating affordability problems here. I mean, $1 million, unit in a 3-family is creating affordability problems, but that's actually a good sign for the overall economic strength of the town. Now, does that make it comfortable for people? No, but we're as flush as our biggest risk is actually the economy turning over versus something in terms of, like, us hiring on too many people. The biggest risk is we have, housing prices fall. And that is, I think, and by the way, the negative outlook, I think that's, I'm pretty sure that says that there's a 1/3 chance that
Right.
they're gonna reduce you over the next 3 years. So we really have the next year or two to make sure that we're sort of staying on track, and we'll probably keep it. Because I think even though they say it's a 1/3, I think they only do it about 20-25% of the time. When you have a negative outlook, do they cut you?
Councilor Carney.
Yeah, I think some of the issues out there and the differences in communities are obvious. We haven't gone out on a tax override to pay employees. And many of the communities around us have that kind of battle. So I mean, those are the kinds of things that stick out on your financials. And we're going out for facilities. We have an asset that we're paying for. I think that's very, very important to take under consideration. I think you've done a great job, Steve, and I'm very positive about where we are right now. But I agree with you. It's always going to come a time when the economy is starting to slow down. I believe taxpayers are tired. They're selfish, to be honest with you. They get more than we've ever had. And then they say, well, why am I paying more? And $1,000 a house is going to be a lot impact when you talk about paying for the high school. The average of $1,000. So I think we have to be looking that way, at least showing that we're showing some recognition of the expenses and taxes people are paying going forward. And this is the start of, I think, a little conservative trend here as we go through this, so people can accept that we're watching over their funds in a financial, educated manner.
Any other questions, comments from councilors? I have one question for you, Councilor Butler. Why do you say that you think the biggest risk is housing prices falling?
Well, because that's probably what most of our revenue is tied to. Like, we don't get anything really from our commercial tax base, so our,
Well, mass assessing says you increased by 2.5% plus new growth. It's not based on the gross value of your house. If everybody's house drops 20%, we get the same
we're just
amount of
gonna
money.
have a whole lot more fighting with Victor over valuations, but.
I'm
I think
sorry.
the difference is the rate would go up, right? You keep the two, the rate would go up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I understand the discussion about reserves. I thought 10% was actually too high.
I know.
Apparently now people are shooting out a 15 number. I don't think that's doable. At least I wouldn't be supporting it. I more agree with Councilor Dombrowski that we have to, and I took a couple hard votes last budget cycle, voting against people I very much like relative to FTEs. And I think we all have to also, I think the revenue side has been exhausted for now. So I think we really should be focusing more on the cost side. But that's just one person's opinion.
Councilor Vincent.
Councilor Vincent. Well, two people. Okay, two people.
Thank you, Chair McLean. I just wanted to note a couple things there. The Raiders do say that Wakefield typically budgets very conservatively, as shown by its relatively balanced result year over year. So I think there has been a past and a current practice that we, under Mr. Mayor's leadership, we do budget very conservative. I know we have more issues to face because of the school, but I think our past practice has been very good. I also want to remind the public that when it comes to some of the FTEs, one of the biggest one that was approved this year was the conservation full-time agent. That was passed at town meeting. So the residents of this town decided that there were some jobs that needed to be fulfilled, notwithstanding the fact that we have to pay for new school and that their taxes have gone up. So I think that the public is mindful and intelligent enough to know that in order to have an efficient and effective town government, we sometimes have to make decisions on hiring employees with certain subject matter expertise.
Any further comments? Seeing none, we will move on from the bond rating discussion. We have as item 6, regular town meeting date. I know we don't engage in public participation, engage with the individuals usually, but I am definitely interested in hearing town council's opinion, town administrator opinion as to whether we would be doing anything wrong by having a Saturday, November.
I'm going to say no, and he's going to explain why.
That's the pecking order here.
Not surprisingly, Mr. Mayo is correct. We started out with a bylaw provision from 2001 that says the annual financial town meeting shall be held on the first Monday of November in each year. 7 years later, we amended the charter, and remember, of course, the charter takes precedence over the bylaws. And the charter, since 2008, has said, a regular town meeting shall be held within 30 days of the first Monday in November, said date to be set by the board, by the town council, or on such date as may from time to time be fixed in the bylaws of the town. Literally, the word "or" there means you can pick which you want to go with.
It's
It
the
can be-
disjunctive.
Yes, that's another way of putting it. So we have done this before, faced the issue before, and come to the same conclusion. So I'm comfortable proceeding with any time within 30 days of the first Monday in November.
Yeah, I would just like to say that I think Saturdays sometimes work well. We can maybe get in and out in a day, and maybe people are more able to come. And we're also always trying to schedule things. It's difficult. It's difficult to find
I will
days.
say that over the last couple of years, it's, the spring has been a Monday, Thursday thing, and the fall has been a Saturday over the last few years. And I think I don't really care personally. I do like getting it done. One day is great. Sometimes when you have those Monday, Thursdays, it gets to around 9 o'clock and we've only gone through a couple of articles and someone wants to adjourn because they're tired. I think it's hard for people no matter what. Life is hard. Scheduling is hard. So I thought that was kind of the consensus before, is that we did the fall and the...
And the B and C follow from the A, the
Yes.
dates.
No,
Yeah.
well, either way, I mean, those could be, if you went to Monday the 17th or whatever, that wouldn't matter.
Yeah. Do any of the counselors have comments or opinions on this?
I just wanted to raise that some people have mentioned about town meeting being at night or being on a Saturday, and it was actually a deliberate decision that had been made right around COVID time, actually, about the idea of having alternating, because some people found that they couldn't make it for weeknight. I think it was more specifically some older folks had indicated that it was a little more challenging, and some folks with kids were saying it was challenging, so they thought Saturday worked better. Other people felt the opposite. So I don't know that there's ever been a sweet spot that we've hit. So as to my recall, since 2020, we've really have been alternating it, so people understand we haven't changed it either way. We've just alternated it going forward, so we don't have it always on Saturdays or always weeknights. I think, for that reason. But there's never going to be a solution that's going to work for everyone relative to this. The only question I had, though, was, I know Ms. Waite was talking about when the RFPs were due and then ultimately when they'd make the recommendation to us. So I think that might fall outside of the close of the warrant. So we'll put like a placeholder in there? Is that...
The warrant article's actually already been drafted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can deal with that. So it'll just be in there then? And...
Exactly.
Okay. So
It's kind of like, when I'll put a contract in there,
Right.
even though it hasn't been settled yet.
Yeah, that's what I was assuming.
Right.
I assume
Yeah.
we'd have some kind of accommodation for that. Okay.
And town administrator, do we normally go to the town clerk first, or does she wait and see what we do?
She waits and sees what we do. Town
Okay.
council
Well, I
sets
wouldn't
the
want to
date.
get her
Yeah,
angry.
I
She's
know.
could be kind of scary.
Yeah.
you know? All right.
And I would never and ever schedule a town meeting on the Monday before the federal election. I mean, with the same workers that are going to work the election, getting there at 6 in the morning should not be at a town meeting 10 o'clock the night before. So there's no way I would ever do. Betsy would do it in a heartbeat, and she would whip everybody into shape, but I would never let that happen to her or anybody else. So.
Okay. Any other comments on the regular town meeting date potential schedule? Seeing none, does this one require a vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think you can do all three on one if you wish.
Then I would be happy to entertain a motion that we set the fall town meeting date for November 16th, 2024 at 8 a.m. at the Galvin Middle School. Open the warrant on September 9th, 2024, and close the warrant on October 4th, 2024 at 12 p.m.
I'll just say so moved.
Okay?
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion further? Seeing none, roll call vote. Counselor Vincent?
Yes.
Counselor Butler?
Yes.
Counselor Butt?
Yes.
Counselor Dombrowski?
Aye.
Counselor Carney? Counselor Chines?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That's 7-0. Sherry, for the record. Moving on to licensing number 7. We have a one-day liquor license for bespoke bartending. These are one at a time, Town Administrator?
Yes, please.
Okay. Sherry, I assume everything is in order and you've received everything that we need?
Yeah. Yep.
And these are both related to?
These are both for Town Day.
Town Day. There we go.
Yes.
Yeah. Would entertain a motion.
So I'll move that the request for bespoke bartending for Town Day on September 21st, 2024, a one-day liquor license be approved.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Chines. Any discussion? Seeing none. Counselor Vincent?
Yes.
Counselor Butler?
Yes.
Counselor Butt?
Yes.
Counselor Dombrowski?
Aye.
Counselor Carney? Counselor Chines?
Yes.
And I am a yes, Sherry, that's 7-0. Moving to B, we are entertaining a one-day liquor license for Idle Hands Craft Ales. I've seen them there before.
A moment.
Second.
I have a motion from Counselor Carney and second by Counselor Chines. Any discussion? Yes, Counselor?
So, Steve and Sherry, just like we've done in years past for these town days, we were talking to them about having non-alcoholic
Non-alcoholic
options.
and
Wristbands.
wristbands and
Yeah,
all that stuff.
just
Yep.
the non-alcoholic, I think, is really important on these family-friendly events. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Counselor Dombrowski?
I just add on, especially when we're talking about craft brewers and the like, there are so many non-alcoholic craft brews now that I would really strongly encourage them to not just have like bottled water, for
to have the
instance, but also
non-alc, yeah.
have that as a non-alcoholic option. That's very, very common now.
Yeah, I actually tried to reach out in a prior year to the Connecticut brewery to Athletic, I believe it
Athletic,
is.
yeah,
Yes, I thought
so
they'd be wonderful there, but didn't get a call back. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Counselor Vincent,
Yes.
Counselor Butler,
Yes.
Counselor Butt,
Yes.
Counselor Dombrowski,
Aye.
Counselor Carney,
Yes.
Counselor Chines.
Yes.
And I am, yes, also, Sherry, there is 7-0 for idle hands. License, one-day liquor license. We have appointments. We have an appointment under A to the Commission on Disabilities.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we appoint Mr. Charles Tuttle to the Commission on Disabilities for a term expiring April 30th, 2027.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion relative to Mr. Tuttle's application? Seeing none, Counselor Vincent,
Yes.
Counselor Butler,
Yes.
Counselor Butt,
Yes.
Counselor Dombrowski,
Aye.
Counselor Carney,
Yes.
and Counselor Chines.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Sherry, there's 7-0. I've appointed Mr. Tuttle to the Commission on Disabilities. Relative to the WCAT working group, my understanding is we had somebody move out of town, and we have a request for a replacement for the working group. Do I have a
Just-
motion?
A follow-up that I've been to Idle Hands, and they do serve non-alcoholic beer there, so they serve athletic, so they should be able to bring.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
And I've been, so not that I've had the non-alcoholic choice, but.
Do we have a possible motion over here?
I just had a clarification. So we don't have,
Yes.
would we normally have a resume for this working group?
This is actually a liaison from the Cable Advisory Committee.
Okay.
They're a liaison to the WCAT working group, so that liaison has left the town, so the.
Got it. So
yeah.
there would be no reason because they're already on. Okay.
Right, exactly.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would move that we accept Mr. Shane McCarthy to serve as backup in service for the WCAT working group.
Second.
Motion seconded by Counselor Chines. Any discussion? Seeing none. Counselor Vincent?
Yes.
Counselor Butler?
Wait, hold on. No is.
Which way did you vote?
He said yes.
You said yes, I believe.
Well,
Oh, I thought he said no. That's why I was thrown. I was like, yes.
Counselor Butt?
Yes.
Counselor
I had to go
Dombrowski?
first every time, by the way.
I heard.
Counselor Carney? Counselor Chines?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That's 7-0. Sherry? I'm not starting with Counselor Vincent next time if we have any more.
These two you could take together.
Take together.
Donations, Council on Aging and Library. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept $125 donation to the Council on Aging from various donors and $1,130 to the library from various donors with our thanks.
Second.
Motion seconded by Counselor Chines. Any discussion? Counselor Carney?
Yes.
Counselor Chines?
Yes.
Counselor Dombrowski?
Aye.
Counselor Butt?
Yes.
Counselor Butler?
Yep.
Counselor Vincent?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, that's 7-0. Thank you all. Number 10, approval for the minutes. These will be the minutes of the August 12th, 2024 Town Council meeting.
I move that we approve the minutes of that date.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Counselor Chines. Any discussion on the minutes? Counselor Carney?
Yes.
Counselor Chines?
Yes.
Counselor Dombrowski?
Aye.
Counselor Butt?
Yes.
Counselor Butler?
Yep.
Counselor Vincent?
Yes.
And Counselor McLean is a yes. That's 7-0 for approval of the minutes. Do we have any announcements today?
Just very, very briefly, I just wanted to just say a huge thank you to everyone who was involved with Porch Fest on Saturday. I mean, it was just an amazing day. I know a lot of us participated. I know Councilor Butler actually hosted one of the sites, but I am so happy with how it turned out and look forward to having many more of these in the future. So thank you to the host committee, for all the hosts, and of course the musicians for sharing all their talent.
Counselor Butt, I believe you were next.
Just some updates that wanted to share. First, to thank Clerk Betsy Sheeran and her staff for the election on primary day. Thank you for always coordinating that. For people to know, the library is closed on the 11th and 12th this week. There's going to be staff retreat, so the building will be closed. Wave has scheduled their annual 5K race October 19th at 9 a.m. So register. I know we have lots of members of this council who normally run it and occasionally win it. Mentioned earlier, a great program that we started years ago, the Senior Discount Tax Program. Applications are due by September 30th, so go to our website for more information about that. And lastly, a West Nile virus mosquito was found in town. Go to the website. There's some great tips about how to keep yourself and your family safe from West Nile's virus.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Dombrowski, you had an announcement?
I just wanted to briefly mention that my legs are tired because I ran 20 miles this weekend in preparation for the Berlin Marathon that I'm running later this month, at the end of the month. My partner Glenn and I are both running on behalf of Home Base, which is a phenomenal organization that focuses on the invisible wounds of war for our veterans, service members, and military families. They provide incredible mental health services and clinical treatment to everyone affiliated with the military at no cost. It's world-class care, and I'm proud to be running for this organization, and I have in years past as well. I would direct you to my Facebook page if you're interested in supporting in any way. Any amount would make a huge impact for this really meaningful work. And I can say that while it's Boston based and obviously local, it's super local here because I actually have met veterans who have been through the program who live right here in town. And so it really is an impactful program in a way to really help our neighbors and friends. So I really encourage you to think about that. Thank you.
Anything, Counselor Vincent, from you today? Okay.
I guess I'll mention that the Housing Production Plan Steering Committee is proceeding on Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. Is that right, Sharon?
Yes, that's correct.
Wednesday night.
I can follow up for those of us who couldn't hear. It's Wednesday night, September 11th at 6 p.m. You broke up a little, Bob. And that's the Housing Production Plan kickoff meeting.
Excellent. I'd close by saying I agree with Counselor Chines. I thought the first annual Porch Fest was great. Got to watch a couple of my friends play at a couple of different houses. But in the morning, I gave greetings to a prodigious amount of fundraisers relative to the ALS walk. I did mention that I happened to be the individual that ran in the special election who replaced Peter May. The people are just amazing. The Rich Kennedy, one of the guys that has been, leading this charge, is just a profile in courage. And he's lost family members, and he's suffering from it himself now. Dr. Brown is a lifesaver. And I thank Donald Wan for also being there with me. It was a very moving experience. And this this group raises money, Dr. Brown said to me, you know, sometimes it's great to get NIH funding, but sometimes you have to get to the NIH funding. And groups like this, private groups that go out and raise the amounts of money that they do, really help get these projects kicked off. Because, you know, labs take money, research takes money. So it was a very moving and a very wonderful event. My wife and I walked, this is the second year we've done it. And it was great. And we had so much going on in town that day. We had the vehicles, the classic vehicles down by the lake. We had Porch Fest. And I'm also glad that we had 150, I counted them, parking spaces on Main Street that were all being used pretty much that day. If there are no further, I'll go to number 12, matters not anticipated for agenda. Seeing none. Item 13, adjournment, would entertain.
Move to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Chines. Don't need a roll call on an adjournment, do I, Town Administrator?
No.
Okay, then I declare this meeting of Town Council closed at 10:46 PM. Our next regular meeting, Monday, September 16th at 7 PM.
Now, that's just strictly
Zoom.
phone call.
That would be
That
Zoom.
will be Zoom, but I will tell you, I will be in town hall, because I will need wet signatures.
Okay, I'll be with you then
So,
on that day. for a wet
Probably by
signature.
the next morning at the latest, so how those things work, so. You wanna come in?
Yeah, we can show up.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
we can do it right there.
we
and-
can do it right
yeah,
there.
Right there.
7 o'clock on the next week, then.
Yep,
Was that 7 and the 16th?
7 o'clock on the 16th.
Okay. Thank you all.